What was the cringe thing that went down at your high school reunion? 5-year reunion. One guy, always kind of a marginal figure in high school but a nice person, after some sort of discussion, pulled his paycheck out and got loud saying, "Now do you think I'm a loser? Don't believe how much I make? Check this out." Of course, he just made things worse and everyone was laughing at him. I mean, he had his paycheck on him? I haven't seen him since, by the way. At my 10-year reunion, the organizers were doing the thing where they give awards for the person who came the furthest to attend, the person with the most kids, stuff like that. The award came up for who had the oldest kid and people started shouting their kids' ages. When it quietened down, this shy girl near the front said in a normal voice, 11, and then we all realized why we'd stopped seeing Heather right before graduation. Someone who was considered a popular kid at my high school tried to organize our 10-year high school reunion on a cruise ship. Obviously, nobody wanted to shell out that kind of money, so the reunion never happened. When I was in 7th grade, this rich, snobby bully, John, grabbed off my head a wool scarf that my mother had knitted for me. He threw the scarf into a pile of muddy leaves and jumped up and down on it. When I went home that day, my mother was furious when she saw the torn, muddy scarf. She made me tell her who did it, then she called the school principal and yelled at him. The next day, John got pulled into the principal's office and paddled. That's when they still paddled kids. That's a paddling. 55 years later, at our 50th class reunion, John came up to me and angrily said, "You got me in trouble in the 7th grade." I got him in trouble? And he's still mad about it 55 years later? I said, "John, you were a jerk in high school and you're still a jerk," and I walked away. Not mine, but my mother went back to her 40-year reunion last summer. In December, she left my father, after 36 years of marriage, for her high school sweetheart, and she's now living with him. During our reunion, a social group of cool people that I had cordial relations with during high school but was never part of all met up and were pretty happy about it. Until it somehow came out over alcohol that all of them had basically been doing the deed together as a group during high school. Except for one of them. It always seemed like the core member of the group from the outside, not unattractive or anything, but for some reason he'd just never clued into the fact that all of his friends were just rolling in the hay with each other en masse for basically as long as they knew each other. There was some very eye-opening loud screaming. Is it bad that I'm just sort of assuming that these were the theater kids? Is that me putting people in boxes? Sorry. Sincerely, the other former theater kid who was also the only one that nobody was doing the deed with. Small college reunion with my core group of friends from university. This was about 5 years after graduation. We all partied pretty hard in school, but mellowed out in our late 20s. We decided to all meet up for dinner at a local bar and restaurant. Think Applebee's, but nicer. One guy showed up already wasted with a duffel bag full of multiple packets of green herb and the bottle he started on before meeting us. He decided we were boring, finished his bottle in the restroom and refused to come out. He ended up passing out in there. The bartender kicked him out, he was alone in an Uber, and we had no idea where he lived. None of us wanted to take him to our places, he was angry, blowing chunks and belligerent, so we dropped him off at his last known address. It was his parents' house. Both of them answered the door and we handed him over. It was past midnight and incredibly awkward. He's not invited to the next reunion. It's been a decade since I finished school. I see an old classmate sometimes when he does maintenance work in my apartment block. About a year ago, he asked me if I was going to the reunion organized by some of our classmates. I said no, because I couldn't think of anything worse, and also I hadn't been invited. Apparently they organized it over Facebook, which I don't have. When I next saw him 6 months later, I asked how the reunion was, and he exasperately explained that it had been a real crap show. The mean girls had started planning it together, fell out, and then started planning their own. So there were about 4 crappy, tiny, awkward parties, and everyone was confused. This sounds like it should have been a TLC show where the judges vote on whose party was the best. The winner gets to go home with the former star quarterback who picks them up on his old motorcycle. My 50th reunion is scheduled for October. All of this is inspiring me to go just to see what happens. I hope I can get across the country by then. So far, it was the only thing that happened at my high school reunion. It was the 10th reunion, graduating class of more than 850. A well-funded high school. Every class has a trust fund to fund reunions. A good friend of mine was our treasurer and organized it via Facebook. We started big. A ballroom, setting for 1,000. Figured spouses and stuff. A year out, lots of interest, definitely not 1,000 people, and we were starting to scale back a bit. 6 months out, there was even less interest. Lots of people reconnected via Facebook and lost the drive to actually care. Scaled back more. 3 months out, there were deadlines for attendance. The school's alumni association would dispense the funds based on class size and allotment for the milestone. We hadn't put a deposit down because the target kept moving on the attendance. 2 months out, my friend finalizes and does a formal cutoff. She'd kept taking anyone for a month afterwards due to a lack of initial interest. And on the day of, it's at a local bar. Not a small bar either. Good food. Rented the entire place for a Friday night at that. 25 alumni showed up out of 150 RSVPs, with spouses or whatever, it was around 40 people. That was the worst part, was knowing so few people actually gave a crap. But the best part was the treasurer's smirk the entire night. The school had allotted $50 per person for this, so $50 per person plus guests, $15,000, with instructions to pay everything fully. So we ate and drank our butts off to the point of almost being Roman, and the bill was $7,500 between food and rental. So she paid the bill and then handed everyone $100 from the envelope, and then handed the rest of the envelope to the manager and was like, here's a tip. So roughly $3,000 for the waitstaff and crew. Pretty memorable and honestly not that big of a bummer, but holy crap, people just don't care. At my 10-year high school reunion, we had a decent turnout, maybe 100 or more people. We were at a pretty nice hotel banquet hall. There was this one guy I'd known all through high school, and he was a well-known green herb user. I'll call him Chris for this story. I saw Chris walk into the banquet hall, stop in his tracks, turn around in a very slow 360-degree circle, surveying the entire room. He just says, "Whoa," and looks visibly alarmed. He stops and his eyes settle on me. I say, "Hey Chris, long time no see, man." And he kinda slides over to me and whispers in my ear, "This is really weird. I'm pretty sure I know every single person in this room." And that's when I realize he's wearing the same clothes as all of the banquet hall workers. Oh my god. Chris is working as a server at his own high school reunion, and he has no clue what's happening. I walked him out of the front lobby and explained it's our 10-year high school reunion, and he's mortified, beyond embarrassed. He was never contacted and didn't even realize it had been 10 years since we graduated. He just knew he was working another catering gig in a never-ending series of catering gigs. I made him take me to his manager, I explained what was happening and tell the manager there's no way this guy is working his own high school reunion. Awesomely, the manager agrees. We find a different suit jacket and tie for him, and I take Chris back to the party. He ended up having a good night. Aw, that's a lovely bit of relief from all the cringe and revenge so far. Well done for showing Chris a great night instead of a potentially awkward situation. And now here's another story about another attendee being the server, but with one heck of a twist. The people who were supposed to plan our high school reunion dropped the ball, so I figured it just wouldn't happen. But then this other guy from our high school stepped up to plan it. He was in a graduate program and also working part-time at a banquet hall, and he said that his boss would give us the banquet hall for free. It was a really nice gesture and he seemed really into it. He'd been miserable in high school, grumpy, sullen, unpleasant, and mean to other people. He came out in college, so maybe the weight of having to keep it a secret was part of why he was so unpleasant back then. Maybe he'd be more fun now. I was working a crap job and had no savings at the time, so I was neither interested in having my former classmates pity me, nor was I gunning to shell out a lot of money to attend. Plus my crappy ex might be there, and that didn't feel worth it. The organizer made a Facebook event and asked people to Venmo him the cost of admission prior to attending. He wanted something like $15 to $20 a head, I can't remember. Anyway, it didn't really feel worth paying for. Maybe if there'd be some drinks included or something, I would have gone for an hour. I sent him a private message asking what the admission ticket covered. Food? Drinks? The space was free after all. He posted publicly on the Facebook page that if the cost of admission was too steep, message me and we can work out some financial aid. What? I then publicly posted asking what the admission cost covered. No response. Other people asked too. He said it would go towards having a bartender and server dedicated to the event space as well as towards food. Okay, fair. Folks, he was the server. My friend showed up having not yet paid him and he barred her entry. The people who paid the admission cost showed up to an empty banquet hall, were given a menu by their former classmate and told to order their own food and drink from him. He pocketed the admission ticket money as his fee. After an hour, he bought out one grocery store sheet cake for 75 people to share, and that was it. Not so much at, but before. 10-year reunion for my big school of about 500 graduates per year. The plan was for the reunion to take place over Thanksgiving weekend. To help pay for the expense, raffle tickets were sent out to the entire class to sell. The reunion didn't happen. It wasn't really bad, just odd. A guy came with a full Kiss-style makeup on, white face, black shapes around his eyes, and black lips. We were too awkward and polite to mention it, so everyone just chatted with him as though it was completely normal to turn up like that. Is it possible that he just did that as a private joke, the idea to remain straight-faced and watch people squirm, or was he actually a really big Kiss fan? I mean, I'd hope so, because that's frickin' funny. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One guy had made not one, but 2 fortunes and had a net worth of well over 100 million by our 20th reunion. High-speed modem patents in the late 1980s, early investor in broadband, right place at the right time. He had already retired. On our classmate update bulletin, he listed his occupation as unemployed and unemployable as a bit of a gag. Some of the well-meaning but clueless types sought him out to offer encouragement and tips on how to find work. I mean, if that's the worst thing, then your reunion was quite alright and somewhat funny. It didn't happen to me, but I had this friend who got someone pregante back in the day, and she kept the kid. They've both been great about it. He helps financially, but that was the extent of his contribution. She's married, soon out of high school, and met a great guy who's been the de facto dad. Either way, it's a bring your kids if you have them event, and someone let slip that my friend is the kid's real dad. And the kid heard it, and it was a frickin' crap show. Everyone was trying to figure out who said it, and how could someone spill that secret. In the end, my friend pretended he was shocked and laughed it off as a joke, which honestly, in front of the kid, was probably a good move. I mean, at first I thought, crap, what a jerk about the person who told, but then I realized that I could totally see myself absent-mindedly saying something about it to someone else. If the kid heard it by accident, the person who told must have felt terrible. Huh. We had a teacher in high school that told us, by the time you reach your 10-year reunion, at least one of your classmates will have died, during a discussion about mortality. Our 10-year reunion arrived and nobody from our class had in fact died. Saturday night of the reunion, we were partying and having a good old time. One of the organizers gets up to the microphone and was making some announcements. She gets a blank look on her face and drops to the floor. Brain aneurysm. She was dead before she hit the ground. At my 20-year reunion, 2 decades after high school, 2 guys got arrested for fist-fighting on the sidewalk outside the bar we went to on the Friday night. Why were they fighting? One of the guys slept with the other guy's girlfriend in high school and drunkenly brought up the 20-years-old fling. Neither of them married her or even dated her after high school. Those idiots got charges 20 years later for her, though. I didn't go to my 10-year, but my entire friend group did, and they all called me asking me where I was. While on the phone with one of them, he goes, "Oh crap, Brittany's here." Brittany was a train wreck in high school and apparently hadn't changed in 10 years. She proceeded to get trashed, get in a fight with a waitress, and did crystal in the bathroom. The police picked her up that night after she was found passed out in a McDonald's bathroom. My therapist encouraged me to go to my 10-year, which in retrospect was probably a play for job security. That's really funny, actually. To be honest, I get both why it could be a terrible or great idea depending on the others who attend. I guess it's a win-win shot in the dark for your therapist. Either you'd make some ground and regain some confidence, or come back with a need for 1 million more paid sessions if it was anything like the other ones we've read about so far. My 10-year reunion slowly collapsed and died pathetically before it happened. Turns out our class president, traditionally in charge of organizing, took a hard turn into a footloose character after high school. Highlights of her event planning include no alcohol allowed, not even BYOB, a few classmates in a reasonably successful band offered to play for free, but she was adamant there would be no music or dancing. +1s were to be spouses only. 2 guys happily told her they'd bring their husbands, and she kicked them both off the Facebook page. The venue was the high school's soccer field in Iowa in August. We were welcome to bring our own chairs. A few people offered to bring beanbags and vodka and similar games. She said no because it would make the reunion too much like tailgating. Suggested entertainment was a guided tour of the school, which had undergone zero change since we graduated. Catering was from Hy-Vee, which is a grocery store. Their food is actually okay, but tickets were $60. It was ultimately cancelled because out of our class of 300, less than 10 people bought tickets. This was in eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids or Iowa City region, which makes her sudden footloose morals all the weirder. It's got a pretty liberal vibe. I cast no judgment on the Hy-Vee catering, put down your pitchforks, their food is good, it's just not $60 worth of good. I sadly couldn't come up with the name of the band, short of messaging the guys I haven't talked to in 20 years. It looks like they haven't been active in quite a while. A bunch of people who lived locally did indeed pick a bar and a Saturday night to meet up, and had much amoral debauchery. Rumor has it that there was even karaoke. It makes a good story, but I'm ultimately sad for our event planner. I got the impression that she really needed everyone to see that she was the most good person who was doing everything right, and that she hadn't been in control of something for a long, long time. I hope she's doing better now. My class never got to the reunion part. Our class president was MIA. When they tried to plan our 5-year reunion on Facebook, it devolved into people fighting over the venue and whether or not kids were allowed. Half the people wanted to get trashed and get away from their kids if they had any, the other half wanted a dry reunion in a local park with kids allowed. Our class had a fund for a senior trip and prom and stuff. I don't remember where the money came from. I just know that it ran out because we spent it on stupid crap in senior year. So people argued over whether it would be catered or a potluck, and how much they'd collect from everyone if it was the former. I wouldn't have gone even if they'd managed to figure something out. We'd been there less than an hour, having a great time reconnecting. Suddenly, an old friend approached and said, "Is that your wife over there? She's pretty hammered." And as we watched, she tripped and fell face first, full body crash on top of a 12-top table where many of my old classmates were sitting. The table broke, food and drinks flew everywhere. I walked over, scooped her up and half carried and half walked her out the door. She took a Xanax before going, unbeknownst to me, and was an alcoholic who started slamming drinks as soon as she got there. So, yeah, good times. I graduated in 2008. There hasn't been a single word about any reunion. The class officers did a 5-year reunion on Thanksgiving weekend at a local bar. They only invited who they liked, 30 or 40 people. One of the people who they didn't invite had become a police officer who talked his supervisor into running a DUI checkpoint. Almost half the people who went ended up going to jail that night. 2 of the organizers ended up with substance charges as well as DWIs. The 10 years started off better, but still ended up being a bit of a cluster screw. They decided to go with a picnic, the same place that we had our senior picnic. One of the class officers had started a catering company and gave themselves the job. About a third of the people ended up with food poisoning. Thankfully, COVID caused our 20-year to be cancelled. Someone I knew from school tried to arrange an unofficial reunion as the school wasn't going to do one. He was socially inept, so he'd say and do odd things which people picked up on a lot. But his heart was always in the right place. He went to a lot of effort, but very few people responded at all. Those that did mostly made snide comments about the event behind their back, like dissing the location. Some of them made fun of him personally too, as he was doing some admittedly odd over-the-top organizing. Most of the people who didn't reply seemed to be the more decent people, and coincidentally the ones who had moved away or just moved on in their lives. Go figure. Those who were mocking him were mostly the ones who still spent every week at the same bars with their same school friends. Then close to the event, he cancelled and blew up publicly, sending everyone a pretty justified message about how they can all go suck eggs, and he was just trying to do something nice and wanted to catch up with people. That was received with more snide remarks as well. They all actually went out the same night for drinks, but didn't invite the organizer. Jerks. He died unexpectedly from a heart attack just a few months later. Goodness, that's really sad and a reminder that some people really don't mature despite growing up and getting jobs. In this case, I'm talking about the jerks who did nothing but show negativity and mock the one guy trying to make something happen. Still sound like high school bullies to me. At the after party, the one guy getting drunk enough to think it was a great time and place to discuss race relations with one of our black classmates. Well, not so much discuss as randomly impose the topic. The cringe nearly killed us all. I didn't attend as I'd moved far from my school, but in the process I was emailing the organizer and wanted to get in touch with an old friend. I figured she could pass my message on. She had the misfortune of having to tell me that he passed away at 30 from diabetes complications. Rough day, and I didn't even attend. Went to my partner's 5-year at the local Elks Lodge. He grew up in a really rich town, so it was actually pretty extravagant. The best part was the open bar until 9 p.m. and then cash afterwards. We were literally having a great time until some scumbag snuck into the basement and stole a bunch of booze, literally multiple boxes. When the bartenders found out, they were furious and kicked us all out. It ruined what would have been an excellent night. I wasn't even invited to the high school reunion. The 10-year reunion invite came up and I thought, yeah, looks like it could be fun. I noticed the venue is a fancy restaurant. Disappointed, expecting some sort of party. Rooms very limited. For a class of over 100, you'd think that they'd have picked a venue with over 25 capacity. I start reaching out to all the friends I've kept in touch with. Not one of them is even remotely interested in going. My old high school best friend suggests we catch up at his and drink instead. Haven't seen him in years, so I bail on the reunion. Turns out almost no one went. One of the girls that organised the thing was begging my mate to go because she was so embarrassed at how few people had RSVP'd. She ended up bailing herself. Turns out for the 10 people that actually went, half of whom organised it, they had to be split up, since they booked a place that wasn't intended for large groups of people. Unironically, the same group that organised it took it upon themselves to organise our end of the school formal. They decided themselves that we didn't want to go with the original plan and completely replanned it without really consulting the general student body. So many people bailed on it that they had to start inviting ex-students. You know, the people who dropped out, changed schools, been expelled. It takes some real stuff to get expelled from a Catholic school in Australia, let me tell you. They had to do this just to meet the minimum capacity the venue required to move forward with a date. Honestly, I know they meant well, but this group ruined the formal for a lot of people. I didn't know I expected anything good from their reunion. Apparently, the after-party was wild, though. Someone almost got thrown off the boat, literally into the water at 2 in the morning, and a guy we know copped another man's eggplant in the eye. He had been sleeping on the floor and someone was standing over him with his member out. Why was it hard? I don't know, and I don't want to know, really. Nobody came. I went to my 10-year. It was admittedly a really frickin' small town, so my class was only 27 people, but 4 people showed up and 1 was actually homeschooled. It kinda sucked. I was looking forward to seeing people and I travelled a long way, 3,000 miles. It kind of jaded me towards my classmates. I'm not angry or anything, just a realization that there wasn't really any connection that survived. What's the most embarrassing thing a parent has done to you? For those who didn't grow up in a time where you shared a phone with multiple extensions with your parents, consider yourselves lucky. For those who did, me. Hi, it's Kerry. I was wondering if you were going to the mall tomorrow. Girl I liked.
Yeah, I think so. It's Saturday, so I usually go with my friends.
Me. Well, if you're there, do you want to, meet up somewhere and have lunch? Girl.
Yeah, that sounds good. Where do you want to go?
Well, I was thinking… There's a click, some numbers dialing. Mum.
Hello?
Me yelling upstairs.
Mom, I'm on the phone!
Mum, through the phone.
Carrie, are you on the phone? I was calling my friend Reva. She's having some people over tomorrow, and I wanted to know if she wanted any potato salad.
Me yelling upstairs.
Mom, I'm on the phone with Susie. Get off!
Mom.
If you want, I can make a little extra so you can take it to judo. I know how you get tired after class. Oh, I hope I get to go this week. You look so handsome in your judo outfit.
Click. Me.
Sorry, Mom can be so embarrassing.
Mom.
I don't think she's there anymore, honey.
My dad was worse. I distinctly remember having a conversation with my best friends over the phone about a boy I liked, and my dad just chimed in with, "Oh, who's Jackson?" because he'd been listening on the other line the whole time. Had my first boyfriend in middle school and brought him home one time. At one point, my mum made him bring me my clean laundry. And by that, I mean a single pair of pink High School Musical underwear. I cried from embarrassment, but he was actually pretty cool about it and comforted me. Then, he cheated on me. My dad, influenced partly by Bad Boys 2, decided to mess with my boyfriend on my first date by acting like a real hard man. He filled a whiskey bottle with tea, then when he answered the door, he chugged the whole thing while staring my boyfriend down, then tried to break the bottle over his own head. The date was cancelled due to the hospital trip, and I became known as the girl with the bat crap insane father. "Don't concuss yourself this time" became the running joke once I was able to get a date again. That's incredible, and I want to know whether the father knew the risk involved or was just actually stupid enough to try and emulate something he'd seen on TV.
I want to know what the hospital people said. I know when my partner had an oral allergic reaction to my rats and his face started swelling up like those pics of dogs that ate bees, the health center staff was highly entertained. My butt was sitting there in the waiting room like, yes, he understands allergies. Yes, he knew he was allergic to them. Yes, he insisted on petting them. Yes, he had an oral allergic reaction to them because he was feeding them tiny pieces of gummy bear by pinching pieces off, then ate the rest of the gummy bear. Yes, I am questioning my assertion that he's very smart. When I was a senior in college, I was working a part-time job. They offered to make my current position full-time once I graduated.
Before I got a chance to respond, my father found out and contacted my supervisor expressing concerns about the offer and the fact that I was still in college. How my father found out still boggles my mind, but when my supervisor told me that my dad called him, that was probably the most embarrassing thing either of my parents have ever done. I spoke to my parents a few months after it happened, and the only thing they considered wrong with the situation was that my supervisor told me my dad had called. Another story for your entertainment, when I was in 7th grade and went to a youth conference with my church. All the students got a free t-shirt and people were signing each other's names on them. This one girl signed mine, dotted the I with a heart and left her number. Well, I get home, my mum was doing my laundry and finds said number. Yep, you guessed it, my mother called the number and told the girl I needed to focus on my education and didn't have time for girls. After I submitted a job application to a manager when I was 16, my mother barged up and started going on and on about how I was really shy and not much of a people person. Yeah, that's what a manager wants to hear about an applicant for a customer service job. What the frick was she planning on doing? I don't see how anyone could think that was a good idea at all. When I was 8, yes, 8 years old, I was obsessed with the new Charlie's Angels movies with Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, and Drew Barrymore. There's a scene in the movie where Drew is dressed in a patriotic jumpsuit at the NASCAR racetrack, and I really wanted to have that outfit for my Halloween costume. My mum is a costumer, and God bless her, made my costume from scratch to resemble Drew's jumpsuit. Well, as you can imagine, an 8-year-old girl does not have the cleavage to fill that jumpsuit out, so my mother decided to add a massive fake chest to this costume. I was mortified, and for some reason she could not take them out. So for Halloween that year, I had my arms crossed all of trick-or-treating. I still look back at the pictures from that year with deep anxiety. She Googles my boss's number, called him in his office, and asked him to put me on the phone. In his office. I was in a meeting with a client. I didn't answer her call on my cell phone in the middle of a workday. She wanted to gripe about my stepfather and wanted to talk now. No emergency or anything, she just wanted to talk and gave zero craps about the consequences of her actions, as per fricking usual. And that's the day my boss and pretty much the entire company lost respect for me, when the mum of their co-worker called him on his boss's office to talk about personal crap. A few months later, I resigned. There was nowhere to go in that place anymore. My mom did this to me when I was 18. She turned up at my job on my day off and talked to my boss about all her personal problems while being really clingy and trying to win his approval and start dating. I was on probation and the manager had no time for that crap, so I got a call to not come back. I had no idea that it had happened at the time, and it wasn't until a few weeks into looking for work that she decided to tell me about it. She had always done embarrassing crap like that my whole life, but that's when I realized she would mess up my chances at my livelihood and a decent career. So I never let her find out where I worked ever again. Not the name or anything that could be used to track it down. I wouldn't even tell my relatives specifics if I thought they might let it slip to her. I also didn't live with her, so she couldn't read my mail or pay stubs either. Is anyone else getting baffled at apparently how common it is for mums to completely ruin their children's ability to obtain and keep jobs? I can't believe that any of these people lacked the social intelligence to work out that it could only go negatively. Maybe not the most embarrassing, but certainly top 10. My mum went through this phase where she would talk during movies, specifically about what's going on in the movie. She was also terrible at paying attention to what was going on, so oftentimes what she was explaining was incorrect. In addition, she would try to talk over the movie. Mum would occasionally have to yell to make sure she was heard over the action scenes. Imagine, if you will, watching the aftermath of the stampede scene from The Lion King and the person next to you yelling, "Simba is sad because her dad died." My late mom got worse and worse about this as she got older, chatting through church services, movies, TV shows, using a loud voice in the otherwise quiet environments like public transportation, etc. Like, did part of that etiquette fall out of your brain at some point? You taught 2 kids how to act right and now you're off the hook? My sister's college graduation, my dad, my now husband, and I all ignored her, so she proceeded to talk everyone around us through the entire ceremony. Not horrible compared to a lot of these, but ugh. Unfortunately, this isn't a fun story. When I was 16, I had a big birthday party at our house. It was wonderful. I got to invite close to 30 friends, including new people from school. My dad made sure to have my favorite chocolate mousse cake as dessert. It turned into just a bunch of teenagers having a great time and talking. Then my mum was suddenly drunk. We never even noticed her drinking. She began microwaving slices of cheese on a paper plate and eating it with her fingers. Most of the kids didn't notice except for my BFF, who had some prior knowledge of her addiction. Kids began leaving, but not before my mum then began asking one of my friends, who was 15, about her intimate life and whether she was doing one of the other boys at the party. I thought I would die while standing and watching it happen. I had a male friend come over after school, and my best friend/neighbor was going to join soon after. They were dating at the time. Anyway, we get off the bus, started walking down the alleyway, and noticed my mum pulling out of the driveway. So we walked up to the car, and I asked where she's going. Mum, we're heading to the grocery store. Do you need anything? Me? No, I think I'm good, Mum. Okay, well, I noticed the cucumber in your room was looking a bit soft, so I'll grab you another one. My friend looked like he was actually about to pee himself. Was there an actual cucumber, or was she just messing with you? Oh, she was definitely just fricking with me, but she did come home with a cucumber. I'm 21, and my mum still tries to order my steak for me. I ask for medium rare, and she says, no, he'll have medium. And I say, no, medium rare. And she goes, okay, whatever, that's fine. My 350-pound mother streaked in front of my boyfriend and my friends for $100. I was only 16, and that image still haunts me. My butthole of a stepdad thought it'd be funny to give my alcoholic mother money to mortify me. When I was 10 or so, I was struggling with being too big for kids' clothes and too skinny for most juniors' clothes. I was trying on this dress with a mesh area around the neck in the department store dressing room, and it was so big on me that my bosom literally showed through the mesh part that was supposed to be around my collarbones. Kids that age are moody, so I just lost it in frustration and started crying. My mum was like, oh, just let me see. But I didn't want her to see because that meant showing the whole fitting area, my whole chest. Finally, I showed her, and when she saw how upset I was, instead of comforting me, she decided to mimic me, fake crying in my voice and saying, oh my god, everyone can see my chest, and flashed everyone in the dressing room. Jeepers creepers, I came here for dad jokes and funny cringe moments, not actual childhood traumas. This kind of stuff will mess you up for a long time. Well, since we're committed now, here's another one. Sorry, this is a long one, but this will always stick with me until the day I die. So I really liked this one girl in high school, and I was always hoping we would talk someday, but I was a shy and quiet person. So one day we were all waiting around in the hall, and she started going off about her ex-boyfriend and stuff, and I was just there listening and watching. She looks at me and randomly says, hey, will you be my boyfriend? My butt clenched so tight, but I was able to smoothly say, sure, why not? And she just laughed and said okay. So later in the day, I somehow gained the courage to ask her for her number since I'm her new BF, and she smiled and said she wasn't being serious, but would actually like to talk to me. She says she's been wanting to, but I just never asked. Holy crap, my mind was going absolutely insane around this time, so I took her number and walked away without saying anything, because I'm me and will say some stupid crap to screw this up. Fast forward to that night, I'm at home and was going to grab the telephone to give her a call, and my mum asked what I'm doing. I let her know I was calling a friend to talk for a few minutes, but she just said no. Didn't give me a reason, just said no and took the phone back. Now, my mum was going through bad menopause at the time, so she was really mean, unstable, and emotional person for most of my teenage years. Anyway, I asked her about it and she said, I'm not allowed to talk on the phone, but I wasn't in trouble, just wasn't allowed on it. So I did what any teenager does and waited until she fell asleep to go get the phone. So I give her a call and she says she's happy to hear from me and that we can finally talk without our friends bothering us. We talk about the teachers, friends, our schedules, and her general life, etc. I'm really just agreeing and laughing at this point because I'm in utter shock that I'm actually speaking with her. Well, I'm guessing my voice or laughter carried over to my mum's room, and she bursts through the door so hard that I jump and drop the phone. Loud as any person can be, why the frick are you on the phone? I told your stupid butt you can't use the phone! Why are you on the fricking phone? I was not expecting that outburst at all, so I just said I was talking to a friend and asking them for help with homework. She says, I don't give a crap. I told you not to be on the phone, and now you're talking with your friends? Who the frick are you talking to so gosh damn late? For some dumb reason, I gave her the girl's name and not like another male friend's. She was pretty much turning red at this point. You don't listen to me and now you're on the phone with some B-word? I don't want no B-word calling our house. Hang up right now and tell that B-word don't ever call here again. She slams the door shut, and I look down to see that the phone is still connected. My heart dropped. She had heard the whole fricking thing. So I pick up the phone and sheepishly say, hello? She only said, wow, that was, okay, see you later, and hung up. The next morning she avoided me like the plague. She never talked to me again after that, and we never spoke on the phone again. A part of my soul died that night, and I don't think it will ever be fully restored. Mine bought me a diary encouraging me to write in it. Later stole said diary, broke the lock off, forged a bunch of made-up crushes in there, and then read it aloud at the dinner table to humiliate me. My mother was not very kind. My parents, Southeast Asian, told one of my best friends, who's a girl and Caucasian, behind my back that if she was the same ethnicity as them, they would ask me to marry her. I'm sure they thought this would be very flattering. I found out later, and to this day, over a decade later, it still makes me cringe big time. A lot of people here are asking me if my parents are racist. They're not. This is a cultural thing. I've been married to my Caucasian wife for many years, and they love her. It was my 16th birthday, and my family went to a fancy Italian restaurant. The staff came over to sing happy birthday to me, and my dad started singing along loudly in a bad Italian opera kind of accent. We're not Italian. The staff was so stunned, and they just stopped singing. The other customers around us laughed and applauded, and the staff just walked away. I was mortified. When I was young, we had a pajama day at school, but I always just wore my boxers to sleep. Well, obviously, a kid can't show up to school in just underwear, but I was a little too dumb to understand that. Why my mum allowed me to go and even drove me there, I have no idea. It was the most embarrassing day of my life, and the school had to call my mum to come pick me up halfway through the day. I was in elementary school, but I can't remember if it was first or second grade. And the school didn't notice or care until halfway because I was eating lunch in the cafeteria and kids were staring at me. Some adult must have noticed them. I wore C-cup bras when I was 11 years old. My mum loved to loudly talk about them to anyone who would listen. Yeah, she's only 11. You wouldn't think it from the way she's filled out up top. Then I'd start crying from the humiliation and she'd tell me to lighten up. Seriously, half of these deserve a place in a video I did the other week. What's something harmless your parents did to you as a kid that really screwed you up as an adult? Some of these are equally as traumatizing. Telling everybody at Thanksgiving dinner at her boyfriend's house about my tween bout with anorexia. I didn't want to be there in the first place, and she just kept going on and on about how I had carrots for dinner for a year until I had to shout at her to stop. To her credit, she was immediately embarrassed when she realized what she was doing, and she apologized profusely. I was 13 and waiting for a ride with my sister and parents at Dollywood. Across the way, two very pretty girls about my age were smiling at me. I smiled back and acted all cool because I was a skater boy with skater hair, and my Vision streetwear and some shirt with a skull on it or something. It was working too. The girls whispered to each other and giggled, and one even waved at me. Then my mum reached her damn hand to my face and popped a pimple right there in public. The girls were aghast, I was humiliated, and I have never forgiven her. Oh, I have a Dollywood story too. We were with a church group and my parents were along with us because they wanted to extend our family vacation in the area. My dad was walking around with us and I'd wanted to ride a ride. I couldn't find him after the ride, so I headed up to the front of the organized meeting place like we'd been told. My parents and most of the church group were there. My mom starts yelling at me for running off and spanks me in front of everyone. I was 13. When I was 5 or so, my preschool did a play based on Noah's Ark. It was a pre-K attached to a church. We were instructed that our costumes were supposed to be raincoats, rain boots, or umbrellas. I didn't have any of those things but begged my dad to get me at least one of them so I'd fit in and follow the guidelines. Fast forward, the night of the play, I'm frantically scanning the audience because my dad is always late. He finally shows up and brings me a life jacket. I had to stand up there with all the kids in their little raincoats in a life jacket. I was really embarrassed. Dad's defense was that I was the only kid who would have survived the flood. I can laugh now, but I sure wasn't laughing then. My father was a huge racist and used pejorative terms to describe other people. I knew about the words for African Americans, Chinese people, and Japanese people, so I never said them. Little me didn't know about the other words. I used one in class to answer a question my history teacher asked, and he was properly horrified. I was immediately removed from class and my confused butt was grilled for hours about my word usage. I finally said I didn't know what I did wrong. My dad says it all the time to describe people from that country. They called my mum and I had to go home. There was a shouting match between my parents and my dad's mother that night and I was beaten soundly by my father. Mum made me call my 8th grade social studies teacher at home to ask if I could use him as a job reference. He lived with his parents still, and I asked for him by first name. He waited for me at my locker the next day to tell me to never phone his house again, parents' house, and never call him by his first name again. Didn't get the job either. Mum denies this ever happened and claims she would never demand I do something so strange.
Don't you hate it when your parents become revisionist historians?
I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teacher, who would send a letter home to everyone without it specifically naming which child they noticed had lice, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent, all,
"Yeah, she has head lice, so you need to check your kid."
I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice, but kids don't realize that, so the whole class were calling me dirty and saying that I'd infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. I didn't expect so many people to read this, so to address the concerns, she never did anything bad ever in my life except this, and she kept saying,
"Don't be stupid, I'm just telling their mothers so they can sort it,"
and presumably didn't expect them to tell their 7 or 8-year-olds who it was. Clearly someone did, because the whole class knew it was just me by the next day. Seems there's a lot of comments below with similar stories of adults having no clue how oddly shameful it is to have lice when you're little, which sucks, but kids will jump on anything to be mean sometimes. I have aggressive Crohn's that started showing up around 8th grade. My mum took me to all of my doctor appointments, which were all pretty embarrassing because no teenage boy wants their mum involved in their butt-related illness. One particular visit, we were about halfway through the appointment when she whipped out a Cool Whip tub. Turns out the following night I used the bathroom and it didn't all go down, so she thought it would be helpful to load up that in our poor people Tupperware and haul it into the doctor so he could look over it. He had the confused, "What am I supposed to do with poop in a Cool Whip tub?" face for a good 5 to 10 seconds, then politely dismissed it. Who would have thought there isn't any medical knowledge to be gained from fishing poop out of the toilet, refrigerating it overnight, and schlepping it up for an office visit? When I was a senior in high school, I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come and jumpstart my car. Now, my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Mother Fricker rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was a time a few years earlier that my mother had him sent up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts.
"He's always there for you when you frick up though, isn't he? He'd give you the shirt off his back if he was wearing one."
This is actually something people have said about him. People who quit their jobs on the first day, what was your
"I'm out of here" moment?
I used to work at a craft store as a cashier, but quit when I moved. Ended up going back a couple of years later to make some extra cash, but this time in the framing department. During the interview, they swore up and down I would only ever be a backup cashier because I refused to have a full cashier shift. First shift after the interview is listed as framing, but I'm put on cash and told that actually most of my shifts would be cash since they'd found someone else for framing. I spent the next 6 hours giving everyone who came to my register 20% off everything and then never went back. Not technically first day, but second day. When I was 20 or so, I got hired to be a temporary floor member for Forever 21 during the holiday season. My training started a week before Black Friday, so the store was already kind of in chaos. On my first day of training, I walked in and the floor manager gave all the new hires a tour, showing us the facility and layout of the store. After this, I was assigned to a veteran floor member to shadow and get an idea of what my job was and what my duties would be. As soon as I was assigned, the manager dipped, never to be seen again. An hour and a half into my shift, my shadowee got an emergency family call and had to take off for a week. When this happened, I found some other floor manager and explained the situation and asked them who else I would shadow. The manager's response was,
"Just do what you can by yourself, you'll be fine, everyone else is busy."
Figured we'll be okay, so I'll try. I don't know if any of you have shopped in the women's section of Forever 21, but during seasonal sales they'll have multiple articles of clothing that all look exactly the same, with slight differences. Example, a white cardigan with 4 buttons that looked literally the same as a white cardigan with 5 buttons. The best part was these different items were often placed in completely separate parts of the store, and it was the job of the dressing room to return the unpurchased items to the correct section so the employees could put them back on the shelves. Well, these employees fricking sucked, and I didn't know if they were part of my section or not, so I'd spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to find where they'd go before realizing,
wait, this isn't even my section. I've checked literally every rack.
So I'd put it back on the sorting rack and moved to the next item. More than 50% of the stuff I was told to reshelf wasn't my section. I just did as best as I could and got ready for my next miserable day. The next day I come in and the store manager pulls me to her office and told me how slow I was the day before, and if I want to keep working there, I need to be very fast. I explained my lack of training and unfamiliarity with the store, and she told me if I didn't know where the clothes were in sections, I should come in on my free time and memorize where stuff was at. I spent the rest of my shift putting clothes in random freaking places, then never came in for a third shift. Frick that place and frick their management. Nothing as satisfying as hearing a person do what we've all wanted to do at times, flipping off the manager for their unreasonable bullcrap and leaving. My first internship was at a Brazilian teen detention center. It's akin to a prison, but Brazilian law has some distinctions between crimes committed while as an adult or a teenager. Teens go through socio-educational measures. I was walking through a courtyard with my supervisor when some doctors came running, flailing their arms and screaming while officers came running from the opposite direction. I get pulled by my supervisor, who just tells me to run back to our office. These teens, as young as 12, had escaped their block. A few minutes later, an officer comes knocking on doors and the officers and yelling for everyone to run outside because a fire had broken out. Some of the teens had set mattresses on fire in their cells. I didn't really nope out, my teacher did. She hadn't even been there that day, so I was forced by the university to choose another place to intern at. Oh well. I was 17 and working precast concrete. Refused to use a rusted-to-crap ladder. Supervisor called me a wuss, got up 7 rungs before his foot went through a rung, heard his foot snap as he fell. I called an ambulance and walked to my car in the parking lot. Wasn't exactly the first day, but I didn't show up after the second shift. It was rather a popular cafe chain in my country. I was hired to work in the kitchen as a cook along with another senior cook. Let's put aside the fact that I had zero cooking knowledge whatsoever. The senior cook was leaving the kitchen every 5 minutes to smoke. I was just there alone, in the kitchen. Orders are printing fast and I'm standing there not sure what to do first. And the waitress comes over yelling at me to cook stuff I don't have any business cooking, definitely not on my own. Later on, the senior cook told me they had at least 2 rats running around the kitchen. Showed me they pooped on a plate. I never came back and I'm glad the place got shut down. On the first day of working at Amazon warehouses, the managers broke down to everyone how a 15-minute break works there. Walking to the bathroom is 2.5 minutes, 10 minutes of actual break, and then 2.5 minutes to go back to your stations. It took me 2.5 minutes to walk to my car, and I took a forever break. Summer job working for a landscape architect. Got to the job site and he asked me to dig a hole in some rocky dirt. I asked for a shovel. He didn't have one. I asked for a hand spade. He didn't have one either. He told me to just dig a hole with my bare hands and then drove off to another site, leaving me completely alone. I dug for a little bit and then said, "Frick this," and left. Had the job specified that I needed to supply my own tools, I could have, but it didn't, and I wasn't going to work for someone that expected folk to dig through hard, rocky soil with their hands.
Huh, sounds like he sucks at communicating. Those bosses are the worst.
I'd say he's got bigger fish to fry than communication. Guy runs a hole-digging business with no shovels. I noped out of an interview one time, thanked them at the end and said it wasn't for me. Those interviewing, management-level folks, started arguing with each other in front of me during the interview. I figured if this is the vibe at the management level, then I sure as heck don't want to be your employee. Answered an ad in the paper, this was in the mid-90s, for what seemed to be an office job making sales calls when I was in college. Did a phone interview and was called back for an in-person interview. When I go to the interview, I'm led into a room with about 50 other people and a small stage at the front of the room. We're all somewhat confused as to what's going on. Finally, a guy gets on the stage and informs us that we've been selected for the opportunity to sell Cutco. Me and 2/3 of the rest stood up and walked out. Anytime I see more than a dozen people for a job interview, I just nope the frick right out. If it's not door-to-door sales paid only on commission, it's some multi-level marketing crap. I wish some job interviews would be more forthcoming about that. Some places have outright lied to me. Legitimate response. I think that last person's rule about the number of applicants is a fairly good one to go by. I just wish I'd walked away from my first bullcrap door-to-door job. I was a cashier at Lowe's during college for less than a full day. I made it through the multiple-day training, but there was so much stupid crap going on, I almost thought I was on a hidden camera show. All the employees complained about how hard they had to work while simultaneously not getting enough hours. Nobody understood why they were hiring like 4 new people. I was one of those 4. Turns out it's because they were progressing through an indecent conduct complaint that required restructuring of the store and firing some of the employees. This was known to HR and explained to new hires, against company policy, but it wasn't known to the employees. Apparently some of whom still worked there, including the fricking person doing the training. She was really inappropriate and said not to worry about the indecent conduct stuff and that everything would go back to normal soon enough and that we wouldn't have to be so uptight. They fired her the day before I started, along with one of the cashiers who trained me. She also offered me terrible guidance for the application process. They were looking for a part-time help, and 2 of the 3 days they needed help on, I had off from school. I told them I couldn't work nights most nights, but if they needed daytime help, it had to be on one of those days. She said if I was too restrictive, they wouldn't keep me on, and lied to my boss about my availability to make me even more attractive than I already was. Wink! And told me to schmooze them a bit and I'd make it further. She said in the end it wouldn't impact anything and I'd get those days. My first week's schedule, I was working mornings every day that I was in school and I wasn't given any hours on my days off. Aside from the fact that I was given 2 times the hours the position called for, when other employees were shorted, my work schedule was literally impossible to consolidate with my school schedule. I only went to work on my first day to tell them that I was quitting and that their application process was a fricking mess. They couldn't figure out how so much went wrong, and then they asked who trained me and everything made sense. They thanked me for at least showing up to quit, unlike the other 3 they hired, who had just stopped returning their calls and no-showed on their first days. A long time ago, not long after getting my papers as a chef, I had an interview at a hotel for a position in the kitchen. The executive chef and I chatted in his office for about 20 minutes. At the time, I remember him coming off as very arrogant, which is quite common in this field. I didn't think much of it at the time, as the pay was decent and the shift was what I wanted. As I was leaving his office, I turned to leave through the dining room, the way I'd come, which was closed at the time. It was another hour or so before service started, and he says to me, no, not that way. Go through the kitchen. You're not good enough to go through the dining room. I was so surprised by what he said. I just did what he asked without a word. Later on, after I'd got home, I phoned him up and said that after having a close look, I decided that his menu wasn't good enough and that I wouldn't be accepting his offer. Restaurant. Swept under my station when we were closing. Giant brown pile came out with the broom from under the lowboy fridge. The pile then began to scatter. It was hundreds of roaches. Never returned. My first ever job. I was 13 and would be delivering phone books from the back of a van through people's letterboxes. So I'd be in the back of the van with the phone books and there was an older guy slowly driving while I went back and forth to the van/houses with the books. At one point the van was getting empty, so there was more space to move around, and we'd finished the delivery in the streets that we were paid to deliver in, and he drove to another. While driving there, he drove, let's say aggressively, and I fell inside the back where the books were. I wasn't sitting in a seat as the van had no seats in the back. As I put my hand out to steady myself, I accidentally laid it across a portable radio that had its antenna extended, but the antenna was also broken halfway and razor sharp. I sliced the palm of my hand clean open 3 to 4 inches. I can only describe what I saw as gruesome. I said to pull the van over and I needed help. He saw my hand and just threw me a plastic bag, the kind you'd get at a supermarket, and told me to wrap my hand in it. Then continued with the deliveries. At least he delivered the remaining books by himself. I should have been taken to a hospital or at least home to my parents, and I quit after that and never showed up again. As you can imagine, my parents were quite angry at him. Well, as awful as my first after-school delivery job was, it wasn't that bad, and you have my sympathy. At least when I got injured, they would just schedule a later delivery for me. I got hired at a very small knockoff dollar store in an old, failing mall. The owner was foreign with a very thick accent. He told me I'd get $6 an hour, but neglected to mention it was under the table. I spent about an hour stocking the very overly cluttered shelves before I was told to get more chips out of the back storage area. I walked back there and there's about a dozen men sitting on boxes all crammed into a small back room. I asked where the chips were and these guys all glared at me. They started speaking in another language and rapidly motioned towards me. Then one guy got up and asked what I needed. I told him I was supposed to get a box of chips, and he got a box out of the pile and handed it to me. The entire time, these guys are all staring at me. Everything back there looked shady as all hell, and it was very uncomfortable. A while later, I had to use the restroom, which was also in the back. These guys all just wordlessly glared at me while I went into the woman's restroom. While I was in the restroom, someone tried to open the door. I was the only woman there. The owner told me he wanted me to come back that night late in the evening well after the mall closed. I didn't show up. I came in the next morning and lied about why I couldn't work there. He still gave me the few bucks from what little time I did work. I don't know what in the heck that guy had going on there, and I didn't want to find out. Restaurant line chef. Worked a 12-hour shift and was given 2 breaks of about 10 to 15 minutes each. Burned my hand numerous times because they gave me plates that came right from the oven, and never said a word. End of the shift, I told the head chef I was done. He called me soft and said I was the 3rd person to quit on him after a day. I said, maybe it's the way you treat people. Funny how people think it's not their problem when many people quit working with them. Restaurant owners never seem to get this. I was a hostess at a restaurant like this for about a year. We could never hold on to the kitchen staff because they were worked to the bone and barely paid. It affected the whole restaurant. Dishwashers were either swamped or had nothing to do because the tickets were too backed up. Busboys were the same. The servers got crap tips because the food was so slow and the managers were constantly comping food and getting chewed out about long waiting times. And even the hosts had long waits and sections full of empty tables we couldn't sit because we were trying to let the kitchen catch up. Then the idiot owner would come in, sit everyone on my list, and go yell at the kitchen for being slow. We were lucky if new guys lasted a week back then. Restaurant work is a joke. I've been in New York City restaurants on and off for about 10 years. They all turn to crap or just start as bullcrap right from the get-go. My last job was as a sous chef. I'll never work the line again. 2 times. Once I applied for and got a telemarketing job. I didn't know what it entailed. After an hour, I knew it was a terrible fit. Auto-dialing people during their dinners, trying to sell them stuff they didn't want, and reading a horrible script while sitting in a soulless grey cubicle. I got up, went to the manager, apologized, and said it wasn't a good fit for me. He seemed understanding. Another time, I attended a Make Easy Money at This Job seminar, and turns out it was selling knives door to door. I don't know if I technically quit or just noped out at the end of it. I answered an ad for a babysitting job. I was already working on a casual basis, but it was sporadic, so I thought some after-hours babysitting would be welcome extra cash. The couple were both in the military and proceeded to tell me that I would be staying in the spare room and looking after their 6-month-old child around the clock, as well as doing the housework. I would have 1 day off every 2 weeks. They said it's cash in hand, so I could sign on to the dole, unemployment benefit, to make up the rest of the money. I left on the spot. They wanted a live-in housemaid and a nanny, not a babysitter, and they were not able to pay for one. Why they thought it was basically up to me to illegally collect the dole and subsidize them, I don't know. Applied for a job at my longtime favorite restaurant, celebrated my birthday there every year. Owner asks me to come in for basically a tryout, as I communicated I was looking at other job possibilities as well. I come in and they just stick me on dishwasher for an hour. No biggie. Then the dishwasher doesn't show up, so the kitchen manager asks me to stay on their lunch rush. Says I'll get paid for the hours. I do. Kitchen staff was nice, so I was happy to help out, even though I figured I'd be taking a different job. I fill out a time card at the end of the shift and tell the manager I probably wouldn't be back. He understands and thanks me for the help. Fast forward a couple of weeks and he tells me to email the owner after I ask him if I should pick up my measly paycheck. I do, and she basically tells me to frick off over text. Tells me it was staging, and that she had told me I wouldn't be paid. I respond that I understand, but that I stayed for an extra 3 hours which I was told I'd be paid for. She stops responding, and I decide I want to be petty over the $40, so I get the state labor department involved. Dude goes in there and makes her pay me for the hours, including the first staging hour. Couple weeks later I got my $40, never went back to that restaurant. In hindsight, I'm very glad I did this, and sharing the story with others in my city, I learned this practice was very common with local restaurants. Hopefully others learn to stand up for their labor too from my small experience. Secondly, this restaurant closed down a couple of weeks after I got that paycheck. The owner made a long-winded complaint on the Facebook page about how the food culture had changed in the city and her restaurant didn't fit in anymore. Total bullcrap, they were always popular. Most people theorize the terrible mismanagement and employee abuse caught up to her. It's interesting. This story is from about 5 years ago, and I stopped my long restaurant career about 7 years ago. I wonder if there's been any significant transformation in restaurant culture, or if it's still the same exploitative crap, different date. Maybe you modern waiters and chefs can let me know in the comments. More hospo stories to follow. I was a waitress, the only waitress at a just-opened diner. The boss didn't have me sign any paperwork, everything was under the table. But that wasn't what made me quit at the end of the night. In order to get me where he wanted me to go, he would pinch my skirt at the upper thigh, not quite the butt, but very close, and pull me around like it was a leash. Needed me in the kitchen? Rather than call me, he would come out, pinch my skirt, and pull me to the kitchen. Needed me at the cash machine? Again, come over to wherever I was. Didn't matter if I was serving a customer, and he would grab my skirt to pull me. That act, in itself, made some customers uncomfortable. Mind you, one couple left almost 50% tip at the end, but I think it was more out of pity and embarrassment on my behalf. I was supposed to come in the next day, but I called that night and said the job wasn't for me. I came in a couple of days later to turn in my apron, and he just took a wad of cash out of his pocket and paid me then and there. God, he was creepy. I think it was a smart move to quit. When the microwave in the lunchroom was coin activated.
This is like when I made my patrons pay money to use the bathrooms at my roller coaster park when the ticket prices weren't cutting it. Amazing move. At an orientation for an alarm company. Next day, the manager calls and says don't worry about going into the office and to meet at Planet Hollywood. They like to get to know the employees better over lunch. Next day, I go into the office and another employee who I had not met says, "You must be Steve." I was like, "Huh?" They responded, "Light-skinned, pretty boy," is how the manager described me. In the same conversation, I found out no one else had ever been invited for a get-to-know-you lunch. And I was out. Got what was supposed to be a prestigious political internship that came with a security clearance and everything. Found out at orientation that the part-time internship was really 40 to 60 hours unpaid, and that no intern had gone on to work with the organization and weren't really given a leg up for other federal posts. We were supposed to facilitate meetings with heads of state, coordinate conferences, and assist the actual employees with composing published research papers for which we would not be credited. They were definitely drinking their own Kool-Aid, so I bounced right on out of there. I was hired to be a waitress, which has a lower hourly wage due to tips. The entire shift they had me wash dishes in the sink, but paid me waitress wages. A few months later, the restaurant was investigated for another of fraudulent activities. I interviewed for a professional marketing assistant and got the job straight away. I was under the impression that I would be an assistant to the man I was interviewed by. When I showed up for my first day, the same waiting room I was in the previous day was full of people. I quickly learned that we were all hired and I would be a door-to-door salesperson selling some pretty useless crap. I spent my entire day inside a Starbucks applying for other jobs and went home, got paid, but never came back. I wasn't the person, but I was training a new guy at a movie theater. A customer asked for extra butter. She was nice and normal. Not a mean or rude customer, the kind I would pay to handle all day long. He puts the popcorn tub down, says, "I'm going to the bathroom," takes off his apron and walks out the front door and never came back. Maybe he crapped his pants and couldn't bear the thought of returning. My brother got fired because he crapped his pants on the third day on the floor and had to go home early. They said they fired him because he wasn't upselling enough at the register. But if you get fired on your second day on register for not trying to get people to sign up for credit cards and the day before you crap your pants, you got fired for crapping your pants. If you make 10,000 shoes, you're a shoemaker. If you fly 10,000 hours, you're a pilot. If you crap one pair of pants, you're the pant crapper. How have you observed or used body language to your own advantage? The most amazing occurrence of body language I've witnessed was a friend back in high school that could control our group of friends. Whenever we were standing in a circle and he wanted to speak, he would simply take a step or two towards the middle. This would cause everyone to quiet down, effectively giving him room to speak uninterrupted. We didn't catch on for a while, but the way he was able to perform it so subtly was amazing. I believe this has to do with personal space and how we instinctively react to an incoming presence. Similar simple ways to control a group. If you're eating dinner and everyone is done and just chatting, simply stand up. People usually follow suit almost unconsciously. Alternately, if you're a group or milling around but should be heading somewhere, just start walking. Generally, everyone will follow. Sometimes I have to tag a friend or two to start walking with me if part of the group is not paying attention, but once you get 3 or 4, the rest tend to follow. Anyone not following due to being engrossed in conversation will soon go, "Wait, where did everyone else go?" and chase after you. I do this a lot at crowded sci-fi and gaming conventions when my group needs to be at a panel or meet up. Next up, we have a rather long story about an individual who seems to have mastered this particular subject matter and used it fully to his own advantage. I once sat next to a guy in my college class that was unreal with things like this. For instance, once before class, while we were waiting outside the room for the professor to arrive, he saw a pretty girl coming down the hall. Immediately, he goes, "I'm gonna go talk to her," but doesn't move. I'd always known the guy was suave beyond my years, so I'm really curious as to what his icebreaker is going to be and waiting to see this in action. Being a bit unsure of myself in my early college years, this was like Houdini personally giving me a behind-the-scenes look at a magic trick. The girl was very pretty but had sort of a sour look on her face. In my head, I'm like, no pickup line in the world is cracking this iceberg. Then I watched the true master in action. My first mistake was ever assuming he needed an icebreaker in the first place. He didn't simply start a conversation by saying something, or anything. He used his body posture to make her start the conversation with him. As nonchalantly as you could get, he pulls out his cell phone and pretends to look down at it. When she's about 3 feet away from us while still glancing down, he takes a half step in her direction, in her path.
In one smooth motion, he looks up, fakes a reaction of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention," as he takes a half step back to make room for her and leans back against the wall. Her, apparently totally sold on his genuine surprised look and repositioning to make room for her.
"Oh, thank you."
Him, "Hey, no worries. Traffic these days."
"Huh. Yeah, is that Professor X's cost accounting class?"
Yeah, how did you know that? Are you an accounting major?"
"Yeah, I'm in IA2 right now."
How majors refer to Intermediate Accounting 2, meaning she was about one semester behind us in the course cycle. "Well, you'll do fine if you can handle IA2. It's more difficult than cost accounting is. The trick is to..."
"Oh, really?"
And the conversational small banter continues. He also told me later he already knew she was an accounting major by recognizing the book she was carrying when he first glanced up from his phone. Don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to in the first conversation, but people like to think they're being informative. This guy was full of these little insights, and how good he was on this bordered on socially manipulative. So yeah, body language is unbelievably powerful for how subtle it is. To answer some of the inquiries I'm getting about this story, I would say he was average looking on the whole, but he certainly knew how to carry himself, and he did dress nice as well. Sitting next to him can also confirm his cologne was on point. So I don't think he had any unnaturally good looks, but good posture, good dress, and a general clean, hygienic appearance will help maximize anybody's potential. And of course, he had that unmistakable aura of natural confidence. You could tell him his car just blew up, and the first thing he'd do was lean to the girl next to him and go, "Hey, I need to go car shopping. Want to come with me?" No, he wasn't even close to being creepy. That's what was so unreal about it. For the first few weeks, that was my thought as well. Nobody's this good without being a serious creep. Or, he does this just to bang chicks. Once again, my mistake. It was never about doing the deed with women. In fact, he never made any kind of comment like that whatsoever. No innuendos, no, "Bro, this chick is so hot." Nothing. He genuinely wanted to meet and get to know this girl to see if they had any chemistry. That simple. And no, he wasn't really a pickup artist. No, he didn't have any hack to the system. There was no good lines. The guy wasn't trying to teach me anything, although he ended up teaching me quite a bit. This guy just was. I don't think he could teach it even if he really wanted to. What I learned was merely through observation. The beauty of it was how subtle it was, and I wonder if he even knew all of it consciously, or if it was just ingrained subconsciously. For example, when she first said, "Oh, thank you," we were both leaning against the hall wall and she was passing in front of us. Simple enough. By the time the conversation progressed, we were in more of a triangle-type shape, more inclusive, but I never even saw the fricker move. Don't recall anything of us shifting positions whatsoever, but there we were. And only after going over it in my head 1,000 times did I even recognize that it happened, let alone know how it might have made her feel more welcomed. So subtle. But there in the moment, I find it hard to believe that it was part of a calculated endeavor on his part. And I know it wasn't on mine. Like I said, he just was. If I learned one thing from this guy, it would be this. There's a saying in the running world that if you want to be fast, don't try and run fast, try and run easy. And then, when you can run easy, try and run light on your feet. Don't worry, if you can run easy and light on your feet, you will be fast. Same concept applies. If you want to be good at meeting women, don't try and be good at meeting women, put some effort into yourself. Dress well, shower, exercise, these things matter. Learn to get to know all kinds of people of both genders because you want to get to know them. And do it till it's easy for you. Don't worry, if you can put some effort into yourself and getting to know people is easy, you will meet women. And there we have it, folks, the man who just apparently lives and breathes this stuff. I'm still not entirely sure he was all that, and maybe the writer of the story is just a little bit infatuated with him themselves, but there we go. To me, the absolutely most important thing I've learned about body language is that it had to be taken into context. What else they're doing, what they're talking about, who they're talking to, where they are, etc. When starting to observe, it's easy to take one gesture or posture or expression and go, "Hey, look, crossed arms. That equals defensiveness." Or whatever, but that's only one part of an equation. If body language is an actual language, then crossed arms is just one word. You can't figure out what someone is saying by just looking at one word. You've got to look at the whole sentence. I often catch myself mirroring the actions of people I'm interested in, so I guess that's something. Agreed, it's a circular paradox. I can never work out if I'm mirroring them or they're mirroring me. Either way, it definitely indicates interest. During a job interview, sit in the same posture as your interviewer is sitting in. It gives the impression that you're feeling the same way that they are. "I don't think you're right for this job." "My thoughts exactly, sir." Both get up and leave. In a quiet room full of people, for example, a classroom, scream as loud as you can in your mind. Anyone that winces is a mind reader. You should watch out for them. Wow, I'm surprised I'd come this far in the thread to get to the important stuff. I just did it, and someone wouldn't stop staring at me for 5 minutes. Confirmed. Not exactly body language in the traditional sense, but I've sold 6 or 7 houses in my time, and I've always known which viewer would put on an offer by the fact that they 1. Used the bathroom, and 2. Altered something. It's held true every time. I stage my houses very carefully, and I know when anything has been moved, or used, or changed, and would tell my husband to expect a call from the agent that evening. My guess is that the folks are subconsciously taking possession or marking territory. Ah yes, christening the toilet is vital when moving into a new home. Failing that, peeing your initials into the master bedroom carpet is an acceptable substitute. When it comes to non-verbal communication, you don't just like for one particular behavior, you're looking for clusters, and even then, nothing is ever 100% true. Also, you have to take into consideration different cultures have different mores. What's considered acceptable in one culture might not be in another. In a group conversation, people will tend to look at the person they're most comfortable with the most. Self-touching is often a sign a person is nervous or anxious. Lip-biting is often a sign of arousal. Pupil dilation is a sign that a person is excited, and possibly on substances. I think that changes in body language are more significant than anything else. For example, and I've had this pointed out to me, I normally stand with a pretty straight posture, ex-figure skater here. But when I start talking to someone else I think is cute, I quite obviously arch my back and shift my weight entirely onto one hip. This might be a normal posture for someone else, but the shift is what makes it significant. In conclusion, don't trust static body posture. Someone could have just been chilling like that. Watch how their body position changes when you approach. That's possibly a valid hypothesis. I think I definitely shift and shuffle a bit more when I'm anxious or uncomfortable about something or someone, so maybe this post author knows what they're talking about. Speaking from someone who used to be in car sales, some guys look for the wiggle during test drives. That's shifting in the seat while driving to get more comfortable. Probably something to do with taking mental ownership of the vehicle. Hands in pockets or arms crossed equals defensive. Needs more rapport building before pitching. Some people are so intimidated about walking into a dealership that they prefer to walk the lot after business hours at night. That's fine too. We had a computer programmer so overly stimulated that we recognized that and organized a quiet room for him to sit down and discuss his options. He bought the car and thanked us. Some things like handshakes are culturally specific. I always greeted someone with a firm handshake and look in the eye. Clients from India generally give limp shakes because that's more usual if they shake at all. Chinese and Japanese prefer no bodily contact in business. A quick bow or nod usually suffices. For farmers, whoever speaks first loses. There was a guy who regularly came in to look around and all these sales guys tried to pitch him. He eventually brought from the one guy who kept his mouth shut and ignored him. Not sure how that works. Always know who the boss is. Do not assume it's the man or the woman based on who's talking the most, based on hetero norms. Both parties need to be engaged. Very low chance of a deal without the spouse, regardless of what someone says about being able to make a decision. Work and loss prevention. This one, among many, many others, is almost always true. When a person has made the decision to shoplift and is about to conceal, they look like they're peeing in the pool. Every time. LP is all about body language. Or they're like me and they're paranoid that they changed their mind about that thing they were going to buy and put it back, but then picked it up again and now everyone thinks I'm shoplifting, but I swear I'm not. And no, I do not need assistance and I'm a normal average customer, just going about my casual business in your fine establishment. I don't want to go to prison. I won't make it in prison. Shaking someone's hand can make you memorable. This is just something I've observed, so I'm not passing it off as a general truth. When I meet someone new in a casual setting, a friend of a friend, someone's co-worker, someone's family member, etc., a person who acknowledges your existence and makes their way over to shake your hand will have an immediate impact on me over someone who just smiles and nods or waves or whatever. I feel more comfortable with someone who makes the initiative to shake your hand for whatever the reasons may be. I'm much more likely to approach someone whose hand I've shaken to learn more about them at some point in the night. This very much goes in the business world as well. I know it's common knowledge to shake someone's hand when you meet them first time in a business setting, but if someone approaches you to shake your hand while they're leaving, they are far more memorable in my mind. It gives me a sense of belonging, knowing that someone thought about me in particular before leaving a place or setting and had to make their way over to let me know they're leaving. This also works with customer-client relationships. If a customer shakes my hand after a transaction is completed, I'll remember them and may give them some sort of incentives or discounts next time I see them. Americans love a firm handshake, but the same custom is not necessarily true in other countries. It can also be a male thing, with some men using a crushing handshake and holding it for a long time, making it a move of dominance. Lyndon Johnson used to hold the handshake and then grab the lapel of the other man's suit with his other hand, and then stand very close until he got the answer he wanted. Pediatrician here. Girls as young as 9 to 12 will start twirling or playing with their hair if they are attracted to someone. It's pretty adorable to see it develop. This doesn't have to be a romantic attraction, you weirdos. It can happen when they see someone doing something impressive, talking to someone important, etc. This behavior continues but can take on many different patterns, like pushing their hair forward. Some guys take this as a sign that the girl is covering up, but it's probably closer to, "Hey, look at my pretty hair." Take a look at the audience during The Voice or whatever country has got talent, etc. Look at the audience when a slightly cute boy sings decent or better. It's hilarious to watch. It's like a collective sploosh among the girls ranging from 12 to 32. Well, now I can't unread this ever, and now if I ever watch a show with a studio audience, the people I'm watching with are going to wonder why I burst out laughing when a good-looking man walks on stage and there is a camera shot to the audience. When one person grooms another during social interaction, "Oh, you've got some lint on your shoulder, let me just..." She or he is being subconsciously affectionate to that other person and welcoming him or her into the pack. I mean family. Like monkeys picking each other's nits. I had a teacher that was a former cop. He pointed out that a person in a normal state of mind will swing their arms slightly while they move or walk. Angry people have a tendency to hold their arms at their sides and not move them. Always true? Maybe not. Often true? Sure. The same basic rule applies here, and also implies that you're trying to hide something. If your hands sit unmoving in your pocket, you're most likely angry but attempting to keep this hidden. Brooding, if you will. If they're swinging around in there, you're in a normal state of mind or attempting to hide the fact that you're publicly pleasuring yourself. But what if you just want to put your hands in there because you don't like flailing them around? Clearly, any attempt at comfort and ease is a sign of being angry. There's too many absolutes in this thread. I had purposely unbuttoned and tucked the flaps of my 2 breast pockets into the pockets before going out a few weeks back because I wanted to try the look. Anyway, while talking to a female friend, she reached over and fixed them. I thought it was rather endearing. I often fixed my boyfriend's sleeves when we were first going out. I still do, but I did it back then too, and I kept apologizing, just like, "Sorry, that was bugging me. It was all flipped up." And finally, after a handful of months, he said, "No, he really likes it when I do that." I never understood why, but I guess it's probably for this reason. It's a welcoming feeling, I guess, someone fixing you up to make sure you look nice. People who mimic your body language don't want to displease you. That's as close to universally true as these things go. You cross your arms, they cross their arms, that sort of thing. Nervous people often lick their lips and swallow. Liars often do too, as well as touch their mouth, but it can be delayed after the lie when they feel like they've got away with it. Like if you respond with, "Oh, that makes sense," that's when they lick their lips. People falsely accused of lying generally have a stronger reaction than those caught in the lie. One-on-one, that sometimes comes out as the honest person confronts you face-on, while the liar turns a little away. It's more about the line of their hips and shoulders, not so much where they point their nose. I once read that if someone is accused of something they didn't do, they'll be more likely to use contractions in their speech. Something to do with being so comfortable with their own innocence that they speak informally. "I didn't twist her arm." Truth. "I did not twist her arm." Lie. Maybe bunk, but when applied to my children, I find it's fairly accurate. "I did not have relations with that woman." If you're in a situation where you have to pretend to be surprised, keep your eyebrows raised for more than a second. That's a telltale sign. Genuinely surprised people will keep their face in that state for more than 1 second. I'm pretty sure you just made 10,000 people raise their eyebrows and pretend to be shocked at something, only to find that they looked ridiculous. I discovered this one on my own, although I probably wasn't the first. This works for girls and guys. When someone suddenly sees someone they find attractive, the first thing they usually do is fix their hair. They usually can't stop themselves, it's an instinctive thing, like, "Oh, someone's hot, gotta look fly." So the next time you're walking about and someone fixes their hair right when they see you, they're attracted to you. Can confirm. I always do this when looking at the mirror. Wandering eyes in a shop. Not the determined kind, the thinking kind. They're looking for presents. This observation has become so spot on that I ask our customers, So, who are you getting a gift for? And that always surprises them and breaks the ice. People looking to steal something have their eyes everywhere else besides what they're taking. Watching their body versus their eyes is a pretty good sign to customer service them into leaving. I remember saying to some kid that just pocketed some rare earth magnets at my store, "Hey man, those magnets are pretty cool, huh?" He then rounded the corner and stuck them into a metal pole and walked out. I felt more proud of myself for stopping the theft more than the $2 it saved the store. Working in a bookshop, this was usually so obvious you could laugh. You'd get guys walk in, open a random fiction novel in the middle of the book, and start skimming through it like a magazine. But their eyes were never on the pages, they'd never even look at what they were reading. This is a cool switch. According to AmITheA, changing your posture can change your mindset, and your mindset can change your behavior. So, say, sit in a submissive way for just a couple of minutes, and inexplicably, you're not as likely to make assertive positions. Now, changing to a powerful stance, and a couple of minutes later with no prompting, you feel like you're in charge. Assertive and comfortable with making high-power decisions, even when they're a gamble. Glance at their feet. If they're pointed towards you, they're engaged in your conversation. If they're pointed away, often toward an exit, they'd like to end the conversation. I use this at work all the time, and I notice myself doing it. If the person isn't breathing, you should run away because you've killed them in your fit of rage. Works every time. If you see a guy walking down the street and he awkwardly lifts one leg up higher than the other repeatedly, he's trying to peel his sack off his inner thigh without alerting whomever he is with. We mostly do this when we're with women or family. If we're around other guys, no fricks given. I wish my roommate would learn that me walking away from him into my room means it's the end of the gosh darn conversation. Stop bringing new crap up or starting a new story. Mother fricker will keep telling me new crap despite me having disappeared into my room. I don't even act interested. The dude just can't not talk. Someone mentioned body language clues being generally true but not universal. I suffer fairly bad anxiety in public spaces. I've been told by my friends that I look angry as I walk down the street. I've received looks from security staff in shops, maybe in my head because of the anxiety, etc., as I walk around the store looking shifty and darting my eyes everywhere until I settle down. I think I look everything but nervous. I'm sure most people have a more general character, and you can assume body language for them, but a good 10% must have less typical personality traits that affect their body language. If someone hugs you and then pats you on the back simultaneously, they're uncomfortable with hugging you. If you're having a conversation with a girl and some guy just comes in and interrupts the conversation, don't stay. In fact, walk away. If the girl doesn't like that guy, she'll automatically come looking for you. People will always revert back to someone they trust or are interested in. What are the cons of being attractive? You don't know if someone likes you for you or just how you look. They come for the looks and stay for you, I guess. Not always. That's definitely one of the downsides of physical attractiveness. Sometimes people will think they know you, but they don't. And when they discover that you're not just who they imagined you to be, some don't even care who you really are. They just wanted that made-up version and are disappointed when that's not you. This isn't an issue I have anymore as an adult, likely because I know how to handle myself professionally. But in my teens, I had a side job as a mover, and the amount of clients who would be surprised that I was about to graduate with honors and go to prestigious university. It was likely a combination of being just a mover, but also being decently attractive and very physically fit. People project a lot of bullcrap onto you, all from their own heads. Pretty? You must be dumb. Pretty and articulate? First they're shocked, then you're a B-word who has too much self-esteem. Shy and pretty? You must be stuck up. Outgoing and pretty? Who do you think you are, you bossy B-word? Clearly chasing after other women's boyfriends. Great figure? You must be a hussy. Great skin? You've probably had work done. Dress well? You waste your whole salary on clothes. Too skinny? You're mentally ill. They armchair diagnose you with anorexia. In a relationship? You're clearly a gold digger. Single? Then you're either a hussy who is playing the field, or you're a snob who thinks you're too good for anyone. You have to work overtime to appear friendly and ease everyone's insecurities. It's fricking exhausting. I wish I could upvote this 1,000,000 times. I can relate so hard to all of these, and there's nobody I can talk to about any of this, because how do you get to complain about being too attractive? People doubt if you're into nerdy stuff as much as you might say. Plus, a lot of your actions just have all these preconceived notions. People think you don't have any problems or struggles. And we've touched upon the problem of the notion of the fake gamer girl, where people are apparently so convinced that people are single-faceted that they can't accept that someone might have more elements to them than their physical appearance. This comment had some interesting follow-ups. Oh, I totally agree to this. I'm a fairly attractive woman, and when I tell people I'm a software consultant in biotech, they almost negatively judge me? Or there's often the, wow, beauty and brains, huh? comment. Like, yes, just because I'm pretty, it doesn't mean I'm stupid. What the frick? I guess it's just a mixture of one or the other and possibly some envy. You have physical looks and intellectual prowess. That can definitely make some folks seethe with inferiority. That's really their problem, though. Plus the impossible dance you must do. Smart but not intimidating. Friendly but not flirtatious. Helpful but not the office assistant. Talkative but not opinionated. And serious but not abrasive. The list goes on. I'm a woman in finance who's decently attractive, at least fit and plain enough to not be considered ugly, and it's an impossible balance to strike. People seem okay to openly suggesting that everything I have, like an education and fitness and a happy marriage, I lucked into. It feels really difficult to toe the many lines. People feel the need to compete with you, find something that makes you look bad, or show fault. One or two co-workers, same gender, jealous, competitive types, will set out to sabotage your success and your relationships with other people when you're just minding your own business and trying to do a good job. You're the immediate target for psychopath types. I think everyone gets that, not only attractive people. As someone who's been both, it's not the same. When you're attractive, lots of the time people of the same sex or gender will view you as a social and sexual threat to them, and act accordingly. These people are usually just super insecure about themselves. Somehow, being kind automatically equals being flirtatious or interested. People don't think attractive people struggle with their mental health, constantly being shamed or mocked out of jealousy, and people praying for your downfall. Oh my god, this. Anytime I talk to a male coworker, all the ladies will rush after and say the guy has a huge crush on me or his face lights up when you talk to him. I'm honestly just talking to people, male and female, to actually have a conversation. I'm not flirting and there's no intention on my side. I'm just conversing, people. So frustrating. Loneliness. Friends of the same gender avoid you because they're afraid their partners will want you. Opposite gender only want one thing. My best friend in high school became threatened at some point when the pretty scale tipped in my favor. It had always been in her favor. I feel gross saying this, by the way. I don't consider myself a conceited person. It didn't help that her mother even made comments, urging my friend to stop hanging out with me, not to let her boyfriends meet me. It was so dumb. Years later, I realized they were just shallow and toxic. But yeah, some women will just not like you until you reach middle age. I'm pretty okay talking to girls in general, but then there are the bombshells, 10 out of 10. And there's just something so intimidating about them, and I don't know why. I just can't make decent conversations, at least not at first. I'd imagine it happens a lot to them, and must be quite awkward and weird when you just want to have a normal conversation with people. Creeps. As a below-average-looking woman, I can actually tell you that creeps creep on ugly women too. This is the unfortunate reality that is perpetuated online, mostly unknowingly. People assuming it's mainly attractive people being stalked or something. It's become a large documented thing in Me Too when people believed almost every claim since the actresses were mostly young and conventionally beautiful. But most indecent conduct isn't some creep following you or picking out attractive women. A large majority is done by someone you're close to or related to, in which case it's more about a power dynamic than conventional attractiveness. As someone who's been both young and hot and fat and frumpy, I found that the more conventionally attractive you are, the worse it is. Hot me was harassed every time I traveled home alone at night, and frumpy me enjoyed blissful invisibility. Not only the unwanted attention goes away, people are also less likely to help you or give you free stuff. There's a danger in taking on topics like this of suggesting any one group, in this case the conventionally attractive, have things better or worse than the rest. Hopefully, small conversations like the one I just quoted can highlight the unfairness that will affect people at all levels of perceived aesthetic value. The next comment summarizes one recurring theme in this thread quite succinctly. People can like you way too much or hate your guts with a burning passion really quickly based off nothing. Jogged my memory of a time when I was attending my cousin's Halloween birthday party. My cousin, drunk as a skunk as he should be, ended up smashing a bottle or glass, and I was cleaning it up. Another guy came over to give me a hand. Well, I guess his girlfriend, who I'd never met prior, too noticed and felt a way about it and targeted me the entire night. She kept taking jabs or making random comments about me. The solid proof of her raging, whatever she was on, was at the end of the night when they were leaving and she said goodbye to everyone and pointed at me and said, "But not you. Some people truly just suck." Close friends repeatedly dropping you or even straight up ghosting you when they develop unreciprocated feelings for you and it gets too painful for them. I've got serious abandonment issues. Dating can be hard because people create an image of who they want you to be. It's even harsher if you're attractive and a complete weirdo. People act like you're doing something wrong when you break their perfect image, like you're taking something away from them and ruining a good thing. I can imagine it being a con if people think attractive people are only good for their looks and nothing else. If an attractive person is very accomplished, I feel like others would say they got help from being good looking and that they didn't work that hard. In my experience, attractiveness became a crappy and unfulfilling value. At times when my self-esteem was low, I often clung on to being attractive as if it was all I had going for me, and developed a dependency on external validation and comparing myself to others. People who are or view themselves as less attractive than you treat you like garbage purely because they don't like that you're better looking than them. This one is especially true for women. Achievements that you make or respect you gain, such as getting a prestigious project at work, being put down by coworkers to the boss wanting to sleep with you. For the longest time, I would just lay in bed after work and just wonder why certain coworkers didn't like me. I knew that my personality can't possibly be compatible with everyone, but it bothered me that people I only interacted with in pleasant, passing little conversations treated me coldly anyway. As one example, I would pick up shifts at a location where this woman always made faces and snarky comments about the lunches I brought to work. "That doesn't look good, to be honest." Or, "That smells off. Are you really going to eat it?" I had no idea how to respond, and she would tend to ignore me if I talked to her anyway. It was like 10 years later when I finally realized that my small size might have had something to do with it, considering she was a large woman who constantly talked about weight. And that bothered me even more, to be honest, because I agonized for months over what was wrong with me, and it turns out it was my looks? It never occurred to me that it could be something as petty as that, but apparently it was important enough to her to make a nervous 20-year-old feel that much more uncomfortable. I'm treated like an idiot, presumed uneducated or naive, not taken seriously until I prove myself, and my absolute least favorite thing, I can't tell if I'm being pursued for my body or my character. I've also been stalked and the victim of attempted unspeakable act, which supposedly has nothing to do with the way I look, but I've had the urge to completely change so people stop looking at me at all. People never seem to think the partners you choose look good enough, and it's exceptionally irritating that they even expect you to care. I like this point. As someone who's occasionally punched well above his weight when it comes to dating, I can say that in some cases, eventually you learn to look at the people who judge you lacking as a partner with amusement and disdain. Maybe that's just me though. Girls saying they want to be friends and then they get all moody when you're friendly and don't want to flirt back. Probably worse for women, but still. People manipulate and hide things from you because they either want to satisfy themselves or use you to attract and influence others. You can easily end up out of your depth and in bad relationships without the tools or power to escape. You also attract narcissists. I'm attractive enough that I ended up dating a multimillionaire. She turned out to be controlling and violent and trapped me into a lease that I couldn't afford to leave, all because she liked that I was intimidatingly attractive. I won't make that mistake again. I was unattractive for the beginning of my life into my teens, then around my sophomore year, I became fairly attractive, lost weight, started taking care of myself, etc. The difference in the way people treated me was one of the worst things ever. Everyone was so nice, giving me so much attention, men especially. Once you realize how important looks are to social standing, your life changes a lot in a bad way. My senior year, I had gained all the weight back and all of that attention was gone. Now that I'm 27, I'm still very overweight, but I've learned how to be more confident and comfortable with myself and have attracted attention from people that actually care about me and not how I look. But it's a total mind frick for sure. My first summer job was in tech support. One of my coworkers was one of those human beings you'd just be in awe of if you met them. She was brilliant, Dean's List, biomed student, skipped a grade in school, and also unbelievably pretty. Gymnast turned varsity cheerleader. We had virtually no work to do and just kind of goofed around watching movies or chatting about stuff. Some of the things I remember her telling me about at the time were male friendships not feeling genuine because they were waiting to swoop in once she was single. finding it hard to be taken seriously for her intelligence sometimes. Creeps, unwanted attention in public, not directly, but the sense that outside her family and a small group of her very trusted friends, that she might have felt like friendships were superficial. I just derived that from the cheerleader drama stories she shared. I was 18 and had just finished first year of uni as a socially awkward kid anyways, so none of this made sense to me, but looking back I learned a lot from her about stuff like that. People automatically assume that you're swimming in romantic prospects and oftentimes take up a bitter attitude to you for it. The worst I've encountered, while attending a party with a friend and an ex-girlfriend, one Italian girl suddenly stared at me for several minutes. Then later on she went to talk a bit to my ex and said, "I cannot believe he's your boyfriend, he's so handsome." What the frick? Then she came back at me while I was talking with my friends and waited there for maybe 15 minutes, staring at me, trying to talk to me. I didn't know at this point why she went up to my girlfriend, and I was feeling something was really off, so I've only really looked at her once in this and never really answered her. She left later on, and then I've learned what she said to my girlfriend. These people aren't the worst, I mean, they're not murderers or anything, but in my opinion, they really suck as human beings because they do not realize the damages they can do with such small talk and behavior. You're never left alone in public. If you do something weird, people are much more likely to notice. But it's far more acceptable to be weird when you're attractive. Being weird as an attractive person is seen as quirky. Headphones. Always. You can't admit how much effort it takes for a huge component of attractiveness. Fitness. So you just have to let people think that you're lucky to be so thin and that it's not a deliberate effort to get sleep, prioritize health, etc. I'm not attractive necessarily, but I'm fit at an age where many of my peers are convinced that getting fat and frumpy is automatic, and it's hard to navigate. I've tried not to counteract what some of these people say so as to not taint their perspective, but I will weigh in as a man of average to low looks but a weird metabolism. Some of us can do no exercise and eat junk food for a year and still look pretty lean and muscular, even if in reality we're kind of weak. So I say the last point isn't universal, but maybe slightly more at an older age. I knew a girl in college who was stunning and smart. She was a med student, and she also had a large chest. She could not have a normal relationship with anyone, women or men. Women were highly jealous, and men couldn't talk to her face. I imagine it made her feel intensely lonely. Overweight most of my adult life. Wife and I lost a lot of weight together and are now in fairly good shape. I never get used to hugs from the women in our social circle. Now I get a lot of attention and greetings hugs. It's a weird change. Wife is wearing more dresses, nothing overly sexy, just very attractive. I noticed most guys we meet watching her walk away or looking her over. We're very committed to each other, so it's not a worry, just weird to have the attention. People stop taking you seriously. It takes far more effort to get a salient point across. Depending if this is a con for you, extra attention. Quite frankly, if you're a woman, it's more difficult to be taken seriously at work, since people will think you're just a pretty face. Conversely, if you're in a client role, you may be put in front of the client more often because of your looks. If you're male, good-looking and semi-competent, you'll be promoted through the ranks very quickly, which is a huge pro. In general, regardless of gender, being good-looking does create tension within your gender and social circles, social interactions because you're viewed as competition in the dating pool. People only like the chase. 3 of my relationships eventually faded out because I was sick of hearing, "You're so pretty," and they know nothing of me as a person. I wanted quality time. I wanted someone to know me as a person. They ended up saying, "You're too nice, you're so caring, I don't deserve you," and it ended. I felt used. At the start of relationships, they go out of their way to do such special nice things for you. They're in it for the chase only. Definitely creeps. In the same vein, I cannot stand staring. It's a cultural thing, but subconsciously, I take it as a threat or challenge. Also, you can get more dates with anyone you want, but 99% of them only want to be physical, not to actually date you as a relationship material. You start to wonder if your personality is the problem. Friends of the opposite gender just don't exist. When I was ugly or overweight, child, teen, I had tons of male friends. As an adult, I've had guys end friendships with me once they found out I wasn't single, or when they decide I'm worth nothing beyond my aesthetic appeal. If they can't do the deed with me, then they want nothing to do with me, other than to stalk my Instagram. I'm sick of, men can't be friends with women. No, you just don't see my value beyond my reproductive organs. Being tempered and propositioned by people that didn't care that I was married, engaged, or in relationships themselves. It planted a seed that people are not as loyal as the perception they tell their significant others, and I brought it home at one point into my marriage. As a man, when someone much younger wants you, it can be intoxicating, and that temptation can be hard to control. Furthermore, when you reject some of these ladies, they go from wanting to screw you at first sight to mean and nasty and full of name-calling just because you won't cheat. Those good-looking people can be hiding evil minds. The older and less attractive I get, the better people in general seem to treat me. When I was young, late teens to early 20s, women were nasty and men wanted me for one reason and one reason only, which is also nasty. I was subject to some pretty unsavory behavior and called degrading names. When you're treated nicely, it's for ulterior motives. Now, I get along with other women, and nobody is unnecessarily and inexplicably nasty to me, and I've actually made decent male friends. Nobody has tried to screw me for social points in years. In general, people take me more seriously and make far less assumptions about my personality and my background. When you're attractive, people tend to assume that everything else in your life is or has been great too, and I swear they used to imagine me living on daddy's yacht, sunbathing, and only lifting a finger to go shopping, based on the assumptions people used to make about me and the way they treated me. I had a few older men call me princess and act like I needed to be taught lessons about hard work and friendship, which was infuriating because my family was homeless when I was growing up, and I'd been working since I was 14. But when you're pretty, people take one look at you and ask, "What would you know?" Overall, people behave very strangely around people they view as conventionally attractive, and they make a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of bias, and that is a massive con. People almost never accurately judged me as a person. I felt like many people looked at me, but nobody actually saw me. Getting older has been a relief. People ask me actual questions about who I am and where I come from now. Far less people look at me, but I feel more seen than I ever did as an attractive young woman. I can't wait to turn 40. Now that I work in a female-dominated environment, I take extra care to make the younger, beautiful women feel seen and not just looked at. I like this approach of using your experience from both sides of the perceived aesthetic aisle and using it to empathize with those who suffer from the undue prejudices of society. People think your feelings can't be hurt. They assume your confidence is at a 100 and they can criticize your whole look without ever hurting you. Or maybe they want to hurt you for it. And it's difficult to get people to listen to the content of what you're saying. And you can say something insanely profound and be hit with, "Well, you're too pretty to worry about such things." The assumptions people make, that's the sucky part. You're more likely to experience manipulation or be outright preyed upon. For women, people won't take you seriously, and if you marry an unattractive guy with money, you'll probably be seen as a trophy wife by others. Other girls may find you threatening. If you have a friend of the opposite gender, their partner may find you threatening. My job has put me in positions with female models, and the main things I've noticed are a lot of people neg them. It's like they can't imagine this beautiful person can be nice or smart, so they constantly chip away at them, and many times it works. Being attractive doesn't bring down the cost of bacon. Getting constantly hit on by a gender you're not into. Boyfriend and I are both decent looking and straight, and 80% of people who hit on us are the same gender as us. We both give off gay vibes without trying, I guess. I'm not even that attractive, and yet going to clubs and stuff gives me the ick. Like, I love dancing and hanging out with my friends, but I'm so sick of creeps trying to grab me, or just following me around or whatever. If I'm on a night out these days, I usually only go to clubs and bars if I'm with a mixed group of friends of guys and girls, because as soon as it's just girls, random guys seem to think it's an invitation to get all up in our faces. Usually they leave me alone if I'm also with male friends, but even then, it doesn't always work. I just want to be able to dance without being grabbed or touched. Health inspectors. What's the worst violation you've ever seen? Former inspector here. I once discovered a rat infestation in the kitchen of a hospital. They asked me if I could prove my suspicions, and I pointed out the numerous foodstuffs with 1 to 2 inch circular holes chewed in them, but they didn't seem convinced. I showed them the trail of droppings and footprints coming and going from a hole in the floor drain, but they still didn't seem convinced. I showed them the 3 dead rats I'd discovered under and around equipment. I think they began to believe me at that point. Citations included rat infestation and absolutely deplorable cleaning practices. Used to have a job working as an inspector for storage tanks at places like dairies and factories. Went to a cheesecake factory, an actual factory for cheesecakes, not the restaurant chain, to test a milk storage tank. It had just been cleaned and was being prepped to be filled with a tanker full of milk. I noticed the floor of the tank was covered in bleach. It turned out the floor manager couldn't be asked to spend the time sucking out the rest of the cleaning fluid used in the cleaning process and, as a standard, just filled the tank with milk on top of dozens of gallons of bleach. His theory was that there was enough milk to dilute the bleach to acceptable consumption levels. I wrote a report and he was promptly fired. By the way, my 12-gallon estimate is just that, an estimate. It was a huge milk storage silo, 40,000 litres if I recall, and roughly half an inch of the floor of the tank was covered in cleaning fluid. The dilutions we're talking about probably wouldn't have been harmful or even tasteable after being pasteurized and mixed with cheesecake ingredients. But that's also a guess, and it's also not the point.
My gosh, you already went through the trouble of cleaning it. What the heck was an extra 5 minutes to properly finish the job? Glad he got fired.
It was something to do with the extra attachment he'd need to use for the nozzle, or something. Either way, it would have been an extra 30 minutes of work. Something, had he observed, would have kept his job and a clean criminal record.
In 2004, 2005, around that time, I drank some milk that had been in a similar situation. Machine wasn't rinsed after cleaning. I was a toddler and got hospitalized. How often does this crap happen?
Worked in a restaurant. Sitting in the office one day, I hear an awful squeaking/shrieking noise. Took me a little while to find the source. The source turned out to be a mouse, stuck in some old spilled pancake syrup under a storage shelf, being eaten alive by the mouse stuck next to it. I have had to edit out the several minutes of gagging and string of expletives that I just uttered after imagining that story. You're welcome, viewers. Did food safety inspection at a large slaughterhouse for a while. We did our own inspections each shift and the government inspector stopped by once a day too. One day I came around a corner and one of the workers who was running service for the butchers had dropped a ham on the floor. So the proper way to handle this was for him to leave it there and call for a re-inspector to come pick it up, take it out to carve off any contaminated bits, and rinse it in boiling water. Now, it relatively often happened meat was dropped on the floor, it's just very, very hard to avoid it when running in a factory setting with human labor. So this was common. What was uncommon was what the guy did. First, he tried catching it as it fell, which would have been fine. No contact with any surface, and he could have just thrown it back into the tub it had fallen out of. He didn't catch it though, it landed on the floor. Thinking that no one was watching, he tried picking it up and dropped it again. He did this 3 times, so first and foremost he's not supposed to be touching anything that's been on the floor. It cross-contaminates his hands, and he has nowhere to put the contaminated product anyway. But he did this 3 times and dropped it 3 times. Freshly carved hams can be slippery when wearing vinyl gloves. He then, out of pure frustration and annoyance at the unwieldy ham, dropped down on all 4s and proceeded to pick up the raw, freshly cut, 6-kilo ham by his teeth. Stood up, ham dangling from his chompers, and dropped it into the tub with around 600 kilos of product, and drove off with the tub for processing. He was fired a few minutes after that, and the entire tub of product was discarded. I followed him and let him park the tub before I did a very cliché type of scene.
I wish you'd interrupted him while he had the ham in his mouth.
Well, yes and no. Had he picked up the ham by his teeth and carried it to the grinder for disposal, technically he had just packed up contaminated product and had to change his clothes and gloves. Of course, carrying anything in your mouth, whatever it fricking is, doesn't fly. But a straight, no prior warning firing? I'm not so sure. Probably though, that wouldn't have been up to me. But when he put it in with the clean product and drove it off to processing, that shows a complete disregard for any sort of understanding of what you should and should not do when working with food. He had made the decision himself even before I dragged him into the office of the shift director. There was no other option. Not a health inspector, but a Chinese buffet near me was closed down because it got a 0 out of 5 in its inspection. I got food poisoning from there once. The staff just got up and left. Locked the door, never went back. All the food was still out and everything. A week later, a man was walking his dog past said Chinese buffet and heard a loud buzzing noise. Looked through the window to see hundreds of thousands of flies had taken to the building as their new home. Was so bad that Pizza Hut next door had to close too. To anyone asking, this was in Gloucester, England. God damn, get a flamethrower in there. Pools that have absolutely no chlorine. Pedicure tubs filters that have never been changed. All their disinfectants were expired. A restaurant that refused to clean up pest feces or urine and refused to properly reheat foods. The kitchen had exposed wood everywhere. Well, it would be exposed if there wasn't a thick layer of grease and no sanitizer. The pools that have no chlorine things happens all the time. As a former pool manager, I can tell you almost right away too when I get unchlorinated water. Chlorine is volatile and will dissipate quickly, especially when it's sunny out. If you're running an outdoor pool and not constantly monitoring the chlorine concentration and the feeds, it will turn into a pond in about 6 hours. At that point, you're just taking a bath with everyone in your town. Also, really shallow baby pool? You can be almost sure that at least once a day it has no chlorine in it. When you're dealing with less than 1,000 gallons, that thing will vacillate like crazy. Well, thank you for that. If you'll all excuse me, I'll just be busy never swimming again in another pool for the rest of my life. In fact, after reading most of these, maybe I'll just never leave my house. When my son was 5 or so, we had a nanny who used to look after him, and she used to take him to a local pub where one of her friends worked. He got used to sitting at the bar, eating a packet of crisps, and drinking a soda. I'm starting to realize as I recount this, as it doesn't reflect too well on my parenting skills. Oh well, he's 17 now, so I guess it's too late for social service to come and take him away. Anyway, the nanny was great, no matter what you might say. The nanny and her friend were round the corner in the other bar, chatting away, when a couple of besuited gentlemen wandered into the bar. My son was laying a line of crisps along the bar, and one of the gents started talking to him. It's worth noting that the regulars in the bar were used to him being there, and often referred to him as the boss. They let him pour drinks and so on, ostensibly under the supervision of the bar staff. Needless to say, it's illegal for 5-year-olds to be employed as bar staff, even in the UK. "I'm in charge here. Would you like a drink?" offered my son, scooting around the back of the bar. No, it's okay, thanks. What are the crisps for?" "Oh, I'm feeding my friend," my son replied. "Really? Where's your friend?" "He lives in that little hole." My son pointed to a hole in the wall toward the end of the bar. "And sometimes he comes out and I feed him." On cue, a small mouse appeared out of the hole, ran along the bar, and started eating the crisps. The men were environmental health officers. The pub was shut down that week and never reopened. Luckily, they weren't police, otherwise the nanny's friend would have been in serious trouble. This story was pieced together from the report of the nanny and also my son, who thought the whole thing was hilarious. The nanny's friend was quite relieved as she hated the job anyway. My favorite Chinese restaurant got shut down. My ex-wife worked for the city, and I asked her what the deal was. She said the health inspectors found something leaking from the ceiling. They lifted the ceiling tile and shined a flashlight and saw multiple eyes staring back at them. It was chickens. They were raising chickens in the ceiling, and chicken crap was dripping into the food that I had been eating at least once a week. "How do I get out of this chicken crap outfit?" "You secure that crap, Hudson." My dad worked pest control, and after working that job, he can no longer eat Chinese food. He said that nearly every Chinese restaurant he had to work in was disgusting and crawling with roaches. But the one that took the cake was when he had to strip down in the kitchen after a ceiling tile broke and roaches fell into his overalls. My dad did pest control. I went to hang out with him one night, and he took me to a Chinese food restaurant. When we were done eating, he was lingering over his tea, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, looks like they're closing up soon. I think we're keeping the folks from getting done." He's cool and calm. "It'll be fine." So we sit. He pays the bill, and we wait. Finally, they're shutting off the lights out front, and I'm losing my mind. I'm horrified, embarrassed, and I'm thinking, these poor people. Finally, Dad stands up and says, "Be right back." He comes back in with his gear. He proceeds to treat the place for their rat problem and the roaches. He gets me to help him carry and move stuff so he can do his job, and doesn't see any problem with this. In conclusion, Pest Control Dad treats a restaurant for nasties right after we eat there. My stepdad used to be a baker in an authentic recreation of an 18th century New French fortress. Because they sell bread to the public, the health inspector came by, and she was ripping into my stepdad for violations like the stonework walls, the doorless entryways, or the lack of mosquito zappers. He pointed out that they were following the highest standards except for things that would destroy the authenticity of his 18th century bakery. The health inspector relented and agreed to give him a pass after verifying the food storage area was secure. They went to the shed, which was a doorless building attached to the bakery. As the health inspector went in, there happened to be an escaped cow licking all the loaves. My stepdad could only say, honestly, this never happens." They passed the health inspection. In conclusion, health inspector witnesses escaped farm animal licking all the bread in a bakery and passes the health inspection anyway. "Does your stepdad live in a sitcom?" That would explain a lot. Like the laugh track that plays any time he cracks a joke, even if it starts only the two of you in the room. "My name is Cow, and when at night, or when the moon is shining bright, and all the men have gone to bed, I stay up late, I lick the bread." My friend was inspecting a restaurant and walked out the back to find a man stirring a huge pot of curry. With his arm. No spoon or anything. Just up to his hairy elbows in curry. I'd be more worried about how cold the curry is that he was able to stick his arm in it. Most people in the food industry have insane tolerance to heat. I've not worked in a commercial kitchen for some time, and I can still pick up a pan out of the oven with my fingertips for a brief period of time. Can confirm, people would warn me that something was too hot to touch, and I'd be like, it's cool, I have waitress hands. Or alternatively, fire cannot kill the dragon. I like to think it's more a case of working in the service industry kills your will to live, so you become indifferent to the plates burning your hands. As a man with asbestos hands, I can confirm, coffee machines, kitchens, and hot plates will give you a D&D-style fiendish resistance to fire. However, on the topic of stirring curry with one's own arm, you are likely better off leaving it to tools. Unless you're the following commenters. Is there a different way to stir curry? Well, only if you're really well hung. I had a health inspector tell me this story. There was a family in which both the elderly mother and a handicapped sibling used wheelchairs. Another sibling lived in the house with them and did all the driving, etc. The health department got a phone call from the local wheelchair company. The brother stopped by and picked up a new, custom-built wheelchair for his sister and for his mother, and returned within about 30 minutes, saying that the sister's wheelchair hadn't been made to the right specifications. It was too small. After he left, the staff noticed several roaches on the chair, so the guy got a call. Apparently, it was summer, Midwest, both hot and humid, and the house was all locked up with no open windows for ventilation, curtains drawn, etc. The inspector entered the house and said it was so stifling hot that he started to get dizzy, and he thought hallucinate. He said there was a sound like leaves rustling in the fall, and the walls and floors were kind of vibrating. He then realized it was because they were literally covered in roaches. He immediately evacuated the 3 people living there, and the next day they tented and sprayed the house. He went in a Tyvek suit and knee-high rubber boots, and said that the dead roaches were about 2.5 feet deep in most parts of the house. I work in a bar in Japan that was connected to a bowling alley and an A&W. Mostly Japanese work there. I'm American, and that place was spotless. Every night at 11 when they left there, they were scrubbing everything. I almost stepped on a guy cleaning the baseboards. You could taste the difference in the food because they kept everything so nice. My girlfriend started working in a frozen yogurt shop. The first week, she decided to clean the yogurt machine one night. The entire inside tank was covered in slimy green and brown mold. Oh, and the shop next door was a hoity-toity gym that catered to mirror-gazing health nut gym rats that just loved that low-cal slime mold yogurt. I haven't eaten frozen yogurt since. When I went to culinary school, one of the professors made the statement, "If you want to know how clean a restaurant's kitchen is, go to the bathroom first before you're seated. If the bathroom is dirty, there's a good chance the kitchen is in the same condition." This is what I do when I enter dives. It's a hell of a lot harder to clean a kitchen than a restroom. If you can't do that, you can be damn sure they don't give a frick about the difficult stuff. While this works for restaurants, it does not work for bars or pubs, except at 11 a.m. A pub's restroom goes really filthy about 15 minutes after the drinking starts. There's dirty, and then there's dirty. Superficial, day-old dirt looks quite different from consistent neglect. Not a health inspector, but my mum used to work at this restaurant where the owner just did not give a crap. It was a Mexican restaurant, and my mum told me once that a lady came in asking for caldo de res, a beef soup, but they didn't have any more meat, at least the one that's used for that dish. They were about to let the lady know when the owner stepped up and told the lady that her food would be right out. The server and my mum were both confused as to what she was going to do. Well, this lady goes and literally digs through the fricking trash and pulls out some beef, some still with bone, and then she ran it through water, cooked it, and served it to that poor lady. My mum says the lady was even sucking the bone and she almost felt sick watching. My mum quit that job soon after. After writing this, I asked my mum again about it, and here is what she said. The bone/meat was not raw, it was left over from people who had ordered the same thing. They'd almost run out of that soup, and all the meat was gone, so they thought they couldn't serve anymore. The owner grabbed the bone from the trash, rinsed it and threw it back in what was left of the soup, heated up for a bit and just served it. Just thought I needed to clarify this. I've worked at places that have gotten 100% on multiple occasions. The inspectors are usually the same few people in smaller areas and get to know people in the restaurants. If you have a good reputation, they come in and check the basics, give you a couple of soft infractions and move on. If you have something that is a major violation, they will start to, rightfully, nitpick everything. I'm hearing a ton of horror stories and just want to point out something about my experience. I've worked at places the inspectors were easy on because they knew it was clean and had a good reputation. I've worked at one place that ended up having to get a follow-up and quit it soon after. That was the only time I'd seen anything too sketchy. I also worked at a place that regularly got 100% ratings, and let me tell you, we were not 100%. The owner wouldn't do crap to improve conditions either. Mice, several kind of bugs, ceiling literally leaking nasty-ass water, on some areas onto the food prep areas, and once the walk-in cooler broke for an entire 24-hour period, and he said to just keep the food like it didn't happen. If my experience in the restaurant business has told me anything, it's that all restaurants are freaking disgusting. But they won't get you sick most of the time, so if you don't think about it, it'll all be okay. Yep, I've worked in places that honestly were bursting at the seams with unsafe and unsanitary infractions just waiting to happen. Worked in some of them for years and somehow never saw a report on them. I worked as an assistant cook in a restaurant. 2 weeks into the job, I opened a cupboard to get a can of tomato sauce, and I see a huge tarantula scuttling away behind the cans. I told the boss what I'd seen so that maybe we should get someone to deal with the huge spider living in the kitchen. Boss turns to me and says, "I see you've met Eduardo. Just don't put your hand too close to him, and you'll be good." Later, another cook proceeded to tell me that the spider had been living in there for 2 years and they allowed it because it kept the rodents and roaches away. This is a true story, so know this. Every time you think about swatting a spider, remember that there's a possibility that a friendly spider is guarding your favorite restaurant's food against nasty critters. The spiders in my house and I have a verbal agreement that is pasted onto every generation of spider that takes up residency in my house. You may remain in my house as long as you don't come upstairs and you keep the ants, flies, and other household bugs that aren't you out of my house. I reserve the right to eliminate you and your webs at will without proper notice. I haven't had an ant in 4 years. I've had a few flies, but they seem to only be upstairs where the spiders aren't allowed. I've killed very few spiders. It's a good arrangement. Not a health inspector, but I've witnessed some things at my first job as a set-up waitress at a banquet hall. The head cook had some hairy arms and he always mixed the salad with his hands. So you know that hair is getting in there, and one day we found a used Band-Aid in the salad. I survived the assassination attempt. My stepmother is the lead health inspector for a decent-sized suburban town. While I've never asked what the worst thing she witnessed as part of her job was, I do know that one instance was pretty gross. A truck full of lobsters was traveling down the highway and crashed. The police came and eventually they towed the truck. As a Board of Health inspector, my stepmother was consulted to see if any of the lobsters were viable, and she told them no. The load is a total loss since there were literally lobsters scattered across the highway covered in dirt and sand, etc. Fast forward 24 hours and one of the restaurants in town ran a special, twin lobsters for $19. Apparently the owner of the trucking and towing company knew the restaurant owner pretty well, so they made a deal whereby the restaurant would pay a very discounted price for the road lobsters. The restaurant would turn around and illegally serve the lobsters to unsuspecting customers or sell them out of a truck behind the restaurant. I'm not sure what the repercussions were, but I think they were shut down for like a week. They closed shortly thereafter and now there's a new restaurant there. The towing company lost their contract to tow vehicles and semi-trucks with the town and the state. It's crazy that they didn't think the health inspector would figure it out. It's their job. Mysteriously cheap lobster after a huge highway crash involving lobsters? I thought that there would be insurance for things like lobster crashes. And now I realize how ridiculous that was as I typed it. Never mind. You aren't covered for lobster crashes on your insurance plan? Weird. Insurance agent here. If you buy lobster crash insurance, we will find a way to not pay anything at all. It was an act of cod. Close enough. Talking 10 years as an inspector. Most dangerous is usually not the most disgusting. I've seen entire walk-in coolers at 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and the staff didn't even notice anything wrong. I've seen piles of mice that died getting stuck in grease behind the fryer. I've seen staff throwing raw burgers within the grill, then making a salad right after with their bare hands. I've seen squirrels and birds roaming freely inside a bread manufacturer. The stereotypes, unfortunately, are true. Chinese restaurants are almost always filthy. The most common critical violation? Dish machine not sanitizing properly. What's the most petty, passive-aggressive move you've ever played? I just hit the passive-aggressive zenith. Played a YouTube video of someone eating crisps loudly while someone else ate crisps loudly, because I can't be bothered to ask them to stop. Basically, this guy is one of those people who manages to do everything that is annoying. Whether it's banging desks, talking loudly on the phone, laughing loudly, munching crisps with his mouth open, etc., all distracting in our very small office. I'm not saying I'm not a prick, but I'm tired of picking the guy up on things he should be able to work out for himself. Has anyone else surprised themselves with their own petty behavior? As pointed out, it probably isn't properly passive-aggressive. The reason I didn't directly approach the guy is because I've done it so many times with so many other things that he's becoming combative and resistant. I'm tired of getting into semi-pissy debates, and I'm at the point where I think he should start actively taking responsibility for the things he does in the small office we share. I always ask if people mind if I put on music or close curtains, etc. I was on the receiving end of some epic passive aggression once. I was in the 12 items or less line at the grocery store, and as usual had counted my items before I got in the line. An older couple got in line behind me and clearly did not think I had done so. They spoke loudly to each other, I guess hoping to embarrass me. "That doesn't look like 12 items to you, does it, Marge?" etc. This continued on, and when it was my turn, one started, "Let's count. 1, 2, 3. I started wondering if maybe I miscounted, feeling a little panicky as I usually try not to be a D-bag. Then finally, 10. Oh! The cashier laughed. I needed to do nothing. The backfiring of their plan was plenty. Although I now look on that situation with that single regret. I should have also written a check, asked for paper and plastic, and for rolls of quarters. Darn it. I would have grabbed 3 packs of gum and put them on the belt with my stuff just to screw with them after that little act. I used to be a resident advisor in a college dorm. One of the dorm activities was on personal hygiene, with free stuff available like deodorant, shampoo, razors, etc. One of my residents couldn't be bothered to speak with his roommate about his disgusting habits, but he sure took about a dozen of those flyers and put them up all over his roommate's side of the room. Ah, that's like a lower effort version of the good old post-it note. Best friend of any passive-aggressive flatmate. The neighbor in my girlfriend's apartment will let their gosh darn alarm go off for like a good 5 minutes before they even try to stop it. They don't hit snooze like a normal person. They just lay there and let it buzz over and over and over again. It was going on longer than usual, so I ended up pulling out my phone and turning on the meltdown alarm and basically pressing it directly into the wall. On top of the horrendously loud noise, it was also buzzing the whole wall. They turned their alarm off within 10 seconds and haven't done it since. If this ever happens again, get a screaming mini alarm clock from any truck stop. It's 110 decibels of get the frick out of bed. Treat it like a grenade. Set it for 1 minute, it's a timer, and toss it in their window. It's brought people to tears because they couldn't turn it off. Oh, thank you for that wonderful idea. My neighbors don't have a problem with their 16-year-old son and his idiot friends going out at 2 a.m. drunk as frick in their backyard, yelling and screaming till the sun comes up. Nobody around will say anything because I live with a bunch of old fricks and I don't want them damaging my car. So I just ordered one of these. This Sunday I'm throwing it in their yard the second they decide to go in, because they always go out every weekend and do this crap. It's going to be so worth the money, even if I have to do it every weekend. My old roommate's friend always used to come over and drink my cans of Pepsi. I'm on a pretty tight budget, but like to treat myself with said cans, so you can imagine how upset this made me. One day I hid all the cans but one, which I coated with nail biter. The second he realized something was wrong, he poured himself a glass of water using the only glass on the drying rack. The glass coated in nail biter. I live on a typical American suburb street. My neighbor just got a new job with a company-provided vehicle. He has a 1-lane driveway, so he parks this huge work van in the road, directly in front of my house. It's all I can see when I look out the front window. I casually mention it to him now, so that he could park it in front of his house and not mine. He just chuckles to himself and starts talking about something else. For the next week, I parked my car in front of his house to see if he enjoyed looking at my car every day. Luckily, he got the message and now parks in front of his home and not mine. Something similar is happening where I live. I live at the end of a cul-de-sac in the corner, and the guy in the middle of the end parks one of his cars outside his house, blocking our driveway to the point where we have to snake around his car in reverse. Meanwhile, his other car sits in his driveway that is thin but long enough for 2 cars. Did I also mention that both he and his wife are retired and rarely leave the house? We have other neighbors with similar situations, so everyone keeps moving their cars like a game of chess to park in front of each other's houses to annoy each other. They are all gradually getting more and more teed off with each other, and just when they are at the tipping point, I'm soon to be adding a new car to the scenario. I will park it in the worst place and watch the drama. Skip passive-aggressive, go fully aggressive. Buy a beta car, spend under $500. Insure minimally. Put the beta in your driveway. Wait until your neighbor blocks your driveway. Nail the neighbor's car. Blame the neighbor for being parked in front of your driveway. Take no responsibility. Repeat until the point has been made. Sell the beta for whatever you paid for it. I blow kisses to angry drivers. I'm a guy. On an airplane flight this past summer, the guy in front of me reclined his seat until he was practically resting his head on my chest. I politely asked him if he would please put his seat up. He just looked at me and said no. I then turned my air vent on full blast, aimed it right at his face. When he reached up to adjust it, I pushed his hand away. "Excuse me, that's my air vent. I like it that way." He ended up leaning forward the entire flight, but left his seat reclined practically to my chest. We were both uncomfortable the entire flight, but neither of us would give in. As my wife put it, "So this is what happens when an inconsiderate butthole meets a passive-aggressive pee-pee." Later, several people have called bullcrap on my claim that the seat tilted back all the way to my chest. I'm 5'10" and my legs aren't long so that my knees will touch the seat in front of me. For that reason, I don't usually have a problem with people in front of me leaning back. I don't really enjoy it, but it's not a big deal. I don't know if this guy's seat was broken or if it was some sort of sleeper sofa unit that belonged in a long-haul flight or what, but I ended up looking down on that guy's face like I was his dentist. It sucked. I was at Costco once and they had massage chairs at the end of the aisle, right by the crutches and folding wheelchairs, etc. Two older women were complaining about me using it, making remarks about how I was abusing the equipment or some crap, so I struggled to get off the chair, gave a look of pain, and wheeled off in one of the wheelchairs. I kept one of my hands shaking and went right past them. Their faces were one of the best things ever. In conclusion, used muscular dystrophy to screw with someone. Oh my god. I think the most perverse part of this account is that even from the way the author has written it, I'm not 100% sure one way or the other whether they actually have that particular disability or any disability at all. I just hope the ladies in question feel terrible regardless. I was watching Batman at a theater and the kid sitting in front of me kept rocking his seat back and knocking me in the knees. I asked him to stop, he glared, then stopped for 5 minutes. But he started again and kept intentionally rocking it back to hit my knees. So I put my foot at the base of the chair so he couldn't rock it backwards. He turns around, glares at me, and mutters, "B-word." This kid couldn't have been older than 11, so I let him keep rocking and waited until he was winding back to rock it really hard. Then, when he was at his apex, I kicked the back of the seat hard. It smacked him in the head and he whiplashed forward. Needless to say, he didn't lean back for the rest of the movie. In conclusion, I kicked a kid in the back of the head, and I'm not entirely certain what passive-aggressive means. You delivered the kick that the kid needed, but not the one he wanted. Some men just want to watch the chairs rock.
He merely adopted the chair. You were born in it.
Let me tell you how I got this whiplash.
When you lean back, you have my permission to die.
There's these two girls who sit behind me in one of my classes that don't shut up. No matter what my professor says, they always have to talk about it between the two of them. After doing this, it's always leading into longer discussions between them. It's freaking annoying because I'm actually interested in what my professor has to say. He tells some pretty interesting stories. One day, I'd had enough of it. When they started talking again, I took my laptop out and made a new Word document. I made the font large enough to where they'd be able to read it and typed 4 simple words. Shut the frick up. I cleared my throat very loudly, I should add, and just slightly moved out of the way to where they would be able to read it. That was 2 weeks ago, and they haven't said a word in class since. I had the same problem in my philosophy class. For about a week, I would type everything that they said. At the end of the week, I handed them each a transcript of their conversations.
I pulled the same thing last finals period. I was on the quiet floor of our student center, where not even the laptops are allowed. The clicking of the keyboard is too loud. There was this girl furiously typing on her laptop and having a cell phone conversation about her child termination. It was very, very distracting, and no amount of throat clearing and angry looks got her attention. So I scribbled, "Shut the frick up," in Sharpie on my notebook, coughed loudly, and held it up for her to see. She got up and left, and I got a very enthusiastic round of golf claps. In college, I had the worst roommate. She would stay up all night, sleep all day long, and dramatically sigh or groan if I accidentally woke her up by, being in my dorm room during the day. She also could not shut up for about 5 minutes.
She literally wandered around our room muttering to herself mostly, "Frick!" and "Jesus Christ!" And if she wasn't doing that, she was sighing and groaning and slamming drawers shut. She also left food that should have been refrigerated out on her desk for weeks at a time, including stacks of burgers still in their paper wrapping. It smelled. Anyway, she mentioned once how she hated living in the dorms because she couldn't smoke in there. I casually brought up how my last roommate broke her contract and moved into a house mid-semester, and she just loved it. New roommate got excited and started to look into getting an apartment. What I didn't mention was that it costs $1,000 plus that month's dorm fee to break said contract, and apparently she managed to sign up for this without noticing that fine print either, because for about a week after she had screaming matches on the phone with her mum about the money. A week later she was gone and I had the room to myself for the rest of the semester. It was great. I would feel bad, but living with a frantic, swearing, sleep-deprived burger hoarder was too much for me. In conclusion, talked Oscar the Grouch into breaking room contract, resulting in unforeseen expenses on her part. Oofed. I mean, she was probably outright told by student housing that it would cost her money, so hopefully decided to move despite that fact of life. It just sucks that it sounds like her mother had to foot the bill. Mine is a painful memory to relive, but I'll do it for the sake of this thread. Me and my then-university roommate shared this tiny room with one double-decker bed, a cupboard, 2 tables, and a mirror. The mirror is depressingly important in this story. It was opposite the bed so that I, sleeping on the top bunk, could actually see what my roommate was doing underneath. You know where this is going. So one day I woke up to this horrible squelching sound. In my mind, I knew what it was. I just didn't want to entertain the idea. It must not be that. It can't be. Furtively, I glanced at the mirror, knowing that the reflection would take a little bit of my soul with it. Sure enough, it was my roommate, under my bunk, pumping vigorously in his boxers. I have never seen anyone beat it that feverishly. It was almost beautiful in some sick, perverse way. Okay, so the problem was that he kept doing this. I kept waking up to the sound of the guy who watches Matrix Reloaded daily, frantically beating off in his boxers. Even worse, sometimes he'd let out an ugh sound that chills me to this day. I cannot watch Japanese adult flicks because of him. I didn't even know what to do. Should I accept my fate and consider this morning jerk session as some kind of cruel alarm clock? One fateful day I was woken up to the usual squelching sound, and I decided to do something about it. I just cleared my throat. He immediately stopped. And it was then that he knew I knew. We never spoke again, and he moved the following semester. You fricker. I know you're on Reddit. If you're reading this, I'm going to come and spank the monkey in front of you one day. Drunk. You mother fricker. I wish I'd employed a similar passive-aggressive tactic on the guy who sits directly behind me. He's insanely annoying, such that he's infamously never sat with his actual team. They rush to fill any seats that come free. And there's a long list of people who've said, "If you sit me near him, I will quit. Seriously." Highlights include, he seems to have old smoker's lung/throat problems, such that his voice always escapes as a gurgled squeal. He can't help that, but he shouts, of course, so it's akin to sharing the room with a banshee. He spends hours per day cramming Bombay mix into his mouth. He then chews it with his front teeth for maximum crunch volume. He'll still use the phone or shout at people while eating. Farts openly and often. Has an incredibly loud and annoying SMS received tone, which needless to say is triggered several times per hour, sometimes many times a minute as he conducts some sort of his extracurricular activities exclusively by SMS. Of course, his desk phone habits are annoying too. Keypad tones set to on, volume set to max, and he opens many conversations using the speaker setting. He has dozens of keys plus his security tags on a long chain which he slaps and drags about on his desk, like he's a fricking poltergeist. That's right, he's a banshee and a poltergeist. I cracked after weeks of this and told him to shut the frick up. On a Friday morning when he was screeching at the team opposite solidly for an hour telling his version of what passes for a joke. He responded with abuse, so I went unpunished, but I still know I made a mistake being aggressive and swearing at work. On second thoughts, I wish I'd killed him with a stapler. I'm a live sound tech. My job's success rate depends on me being passive-aggressive. Oh, you turned your guitar amp up again? Cool, I hope you like me cranking the crap out of your guitar in your monitors now, butthead. I've been to shows where the band members straight up sit there and yell at the techs. Isn't that someone you should be polite to, considering they can make your entire set sound like crap? I've been yelled at from some
idiot on stage for problems they were creating. Oh, not to mention a room full of people between us. I muted his mics, sipped on a beer, and stood there and smiled at him as he had a tantrum. Does this count? Drunk buttholes being loud outside residence buildings at some ungodly hour on a Sunday night. Hey, do you guys ever watch? A watch? Yeah, I need to know what time it is. 3:30. Okay, cool. Now that you know that it's 3:30, can you shut the frick up? Oh yeah, this one. Had a guy watering his garden at 2:30 a.m. once, in the summer, when you have your windows open. I leaned out. Hey mate, why don't you water your garden at 4 a.m. like normal people? Whenever some butthole is tailgating me on the road, I hit the windshield cleaner button and just hold it. Usually, I can get a good consistent spray of water to obstruct their view. They usually change lanes after that. Bonus points for me if their windshield is dirty and their wipers are bad, leaving behind a dirty, muddy mess. Also, if you're all in on this idea, you can take a pin and adjust the angle on one of your nozzles to spray directly over your car for maximum effectiveness. I had a wagon and it had a rear view sprayer, so I pulled it out and found the best angle to hit tailgaters right in the window. It was awesome. People would either get super mad and go into a rage, or most of the time start laughing and back off. I mean, I can't possibly condone this, as you could cause a crash if they're particularly jumpy and unprepared, but it is damn funny, and I'd be tempted to try it. I put 3 staples in my stapler at a time so people will stop using the one on my desk. There's an empty desk right next to me with a fully loaded stapler no one ever uses. I realize this is ridiculous. I was in Walmart once and this kid was screaming. I tried to ignore it. I thought about asking the parent to quiet the kid down. You could hear him through the whole store. Finally, I just stood at the end of the aisle they were on and started screaming back at him. The mother was horrified, but after about 10 seconds of yelling back and forth, the kid finally stopped. My mother would do the same with me when I was a child. Once I threw myself to the ground and started screaming, and she just lay down beside me and watched me with her poker face until I stopped. It worked every time. Every time I was working on a good tantrum, my mother would offer to clear out a space for me on the floor and tell me to let her know when I was finished. The residents at the pool I work at complain about everything, making the shifts that my co-workers and I work extremely trying on our patience. It eventually got to the point where a number of residents petitioned to get one of the guards written up because she was sucking a lollipop in an inappropriate manner while on stand. As head guard of the facility, all of these complaints went to me. Eventually, I got sick of this and took action. What the residents didn't realize up until about halfway through the summer is that the pool they use has a number of small rules that no one really acknowledges, because honestly, it's not worth anyone's time to enforce them. These rules include things such as enforcing designated areas to eat and a sort of blanket ban on alcohol. From July 25th on, under my authority, every guard was required to reprimand all residents on every single infraction, in order to give them a taste of their own medicine. I can honestly say there is nothing more satisfying than having one of my guards stop a hated resident from enjoying a few drinks with whoever they're with, and then looking them right in the eye and just absorbing their hatred. It's sublime. When I was pretty young, maybe 13-ish, my younger brother, 11-ish, kept frustrating me by stealing my CD player, and I was out for clever revenge. We had a CD recorded by a band from the local church called Flying Sheep. Something something Jesus and flying animals, you know the drill. The first track of the CD was 45 seconds of sheep noises. When he went to sleep, I snuck into his room quietly, located my CD player, set it to loop track 1 and turned the volume way down. About every 5 minutes I'd sneak in again and turn the volume up a little more. I did this for about 2 hours until there was nothing but bleating sheep at full volume about 4 feet from his head. My brother slept like a log, so he slept for the whole 7 hours, with sheep noises beamed directly into his brain. He woke up pretty angry. Apparently he had dreamed about trying to herd aggressive sheep all night long. Sweet revenge. If someone is really annoying me with what they're saying, or chewing loudly, smacking gum loudly, or making annoying drum noises with their mouth, I will sometimes turn music on and slowly turn it up to the point where I can't hear them over it. Sometimes I will even look them dead in the eyes while I do it. Well, that's better than my sighing tactic. Bravo! Whenever my roommate shaves, he always leaves little bits of hair in and around the sink. As other people's hair has always made me cringe, I repeatedly asked him to stop, but there would always be hair in the sink. So I waited. For 3 months, I grew my pubic hair to the most glorious length it has ever been and shaved it all off into the sink, and left it. I haven't had any problems with my bathroom since then. In conclusion, a wild bush appeared.
The last 4th of July, some friends and I went down to the pier to watch the fireworks. We were sitting down when this couple decided the perfect spot for them was standing directly in front of us. I'd been drinking a bit, so it seemed like a good idea to bark like a dog. Not like a mean pit bull or something, more like a high-pitched chihuahua. I do a really good impression, by the way. They started turning around looking for the dog until they realized it was me. I looked them in the eyes and started barking with an even higher pitch. I think they thought I was crazy because they just whispered to each other and left. The old man sitting next to me gave me a high five. Watching my daughter at gymnastics, woman next to me was smacking her gum like a cow. I pulled out a pen and sat there clicking the button until she got fed up and left. Non-Americans. What misconception did you have about America before visiting or moving there? Well, I recently learned that New York is a state as well as a city, and Washington isn't in Washington. A while back I was dating this girl from India who was shocked to discover that Seattle was nowhere near DC. The best part about the naming of Washington State is that it was going to be called Columbia, but people at the time thought it would be too confusing, given that the nation's capital was the District of Columbia. This was before DC was mostly known as Washington, so they picked Washington for the state name instead of Columbia, to avoid confusion. My German friends wanted to go into my arsenal and start shooting with all my pieces. When I told them that I didn't have any, they looked at me like I was lying. I've taken several Germans to the range. It's a pretty awesome experience for them. I don't think they really grasp how bloody expensive the ammo is, though. I don't know if it's a misconception, but I expected Grand Canyon National Park to be less well-maintained. Frankly, it's amazing for the amount of visitors. Visited last year, 10 out of 10. You people have an amazing national park service. This year we decided to come back and tackle Yellowstone, next weekend actually. Hats off to the national parks. That is some public sector crap I hope you people decide to keep investing in. For me, more than cities, they are the crown jewels of the US. The amount of public land in the US is unique and incredible. Thank Teddy Roosevelt and John Muir. They were both amazing men that pioneered the vast national parks of North America. It's true, despite the efforts of certain monetarily motivated entities seemingly working as hard as they can to gut the EPA and park services, America still has some incredibly well-maintained hiking trails and natural wonders. Long may they last. This one's a bit off topic, but hear me out. I grew up watching American movies, American media, American everything, and it became this very familiar place that I'd never been to, and it almost seemed like it was fake, like it was all just one big movie set, and people spoke a made-up language I understood but never heard from native speakers in real life. At that point, my view on America was almost disconnected from reality. When finally visiting America, it was completely surreal. Like I was taking part of those fictional movies I'd seen as a kid. I saw landmarks in cities I had only ever seen on screen. It was a crazy experience. I get that. Even for Americans, there are places in the US that can be like that, especially New York City. I thought you Americans ate pizza every Friday. That's why I wanted to go to the USA in the first place. It's America. You can eat pizza every day. And when pizza's on a bagel, you can eat pizza anytime. I thought sheriffs aren't real for some reason, at least not anymore. At least where I am, police equals city, sheriff equals county, state patrol equals state, but mostly highways and interstates. We have a lot of overlapping law enforcements with weird jurisdiction lines and different protocols. Like where I am in California, in a day you might see highway patrol, county sheriff, and the city police department. In lots of places, sheriffs are more likely to use SUVs, while with PD, SUVs are normally for K9, but some departments are using them as well. Being English, I didn't even think about a language barrier. At a football game, it took me about 5 minutes to get a bottle of water. The girl just couldn't understand how I said water. I had to point to one someone else had had in the end. I'm just sitting here giggling and picturing an extremely frustrated Brit standing at a concession stand just repeating, "Water! Water!" over and over again in a fruitless attempt to get a damn drink. It happens to everyone. I'm from Ohio and I went to visit my aunt and uncle in Georgia. I was trying to order a sandwich, but I couldn't understand the question that the waitress was asking me because I couldn't decipher her accent. My sister had to translate for me. It was pretty embarrassing now that I'm thinking about it. Y'all want mustard and mayonnaise on it? I thought people would say yee-haw a lot more. I'm sorry to disappoint. We failed our jobs as Americans, and I deeply apologize. Oh, and yee-haw.
My brother in Connecticut deals with people in China and other countries from work all the time, and he started greeting everyone with "Howdy," specifically in order to perpetuate the stereotype. Honestly, you guys were a lot friendlier than I expected. Even in New York, which seems to pride itself on not giving a frick, I found people to be extremely friendly, polite, and helpful. It's been great hearing everyone's take on this, and now I have a long list of places to visit in America. Fellow New Yorker here can confirm we do give a frick. Quickest way to get a New Yorker to talk to you, you stare at a subway map for more than a minute. The one thing that breaks us out of our do not talk to strangers shell is when helping with directions. I swear, if you ask the quickest way to get to the Empire State Building, 3 of us will jump in front of you to make sure you get there, and 2 of us may debate about which way to go, even though both of our directions are right and it would take the exact same time. If we're really friendly, we'll even give you a tip to skip the Empire State Building altogether and head to the top of the rock. Better views, no chain link fence, and you can actually get that picture in front of the Empire State Building. Something you can't do when you're standing on top of that building. You can also ask, "Hey, does this train go to 34th Street?" just to get us talking. Honestly, I think that a lot of the infamous East Coast and New York surliness goes out the window when people realize you're British or European as well. But maybe that was an isolated experience for me. I didn't realize those red cups were actually real and used by everyone in the US at parties. I thought it was just like a movie thing. My mum's friend went to the US and brought us back a stack while we were at university. We felt like we were in a teen film, and we even washed them up when we were done so we could use them again. I thought that I'd have no problem communicating because the people there speak a form of English. I've listened to their accents in my media the whole life, etc. Man, was I wrong. I don't think I spoke to a single person who I didn't have to ask to repeat themselves at least once. This was in Orlando. Oh, this sounds stupid. I knew America was big, but when I thought I could drive from New York to Florida pretty easily, I was so wrong. I just didn't quite register how bloody far away everything is. And I was wrong when I thought alligators just lived in the Everglades. Those frickers are everywhere in Florida. How surprisingly cold some parts of Arizona can get. I visited after spending a year in northern Ohio and basically went there naked, as I didn't expect anything could be worse than Cleveland's winter. Nope, I almost froze to death when I went to see the Grand Canyon and it was snowing. Yes, when I went to the Grand Canyon in October, I showed up in shorts and a tank top, expecting it to be still and hot, like I was in Phoenix. Nope. Not only was it freezing, but it was the windiest place I've been in my entire life. So beautiful, though. When my parents and I moved from Poland to Texas in 1997, we had no idea Daisy sour cream wasn't a cheese spread. Still have it on sandwiches. On a solo road trip up Route 66, I picked up an 18-year-old Dutch kid on his first trip out of his country. He thought all American diners were owned by one company called Diner. That was pretty adorable. My grandmother was an impressionable small-town teenager in the UK during World War II and fell in love with her fair share of American GIs as there were hundreds stationed in her hometown. They took her to dances, swept her off her feet, and left her with a hugely romantic view of life in the USA, bolstered over the years by movies. In 2003, my family took her to Florida on holiday and she was devastated that everyone lived normal lives. Ah, that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said about Florida. Thanks! Living in Florida makes me wonder if I'm normal or just less insane than the other residents. I thought Washington was the most serious place in the States, but when I went there for a tour in the White House about 3 years ago, most of the city smelled like green herb. I was very confused. After several replies to my story, I need to clarify I was talking about Washington, D.C. Didn't think it was necessary since I mentioned the White House. I do apologize for any confusion. People think DC equals government, which it does, but they also forget it's an incredibly liberal population. I don't know the numbers now, but it also used to be the gayest city in America by percentage of population, and we know how to party. You get a lot of high-strung young professionals, and they have to blow off steam somehow. People might not believe that DC consistently votes in the 85 to 92% range in favor of the Democratic candidates in each presidential election, regardless of who's currently in office or who the candidates are. I'm not saying that the Dems get 90% more or double the votes than the Republicans. I'm saying that 90% of all votes tallied in the district are in favor of the Democratic candidate. DC is crazy liberal. I got an admit to a school in Texas. I was worried about all the six-shooter slinging cowboys and random shootouts everywhere. 4 years in, and I'm yet to see any of those guys here. I did get to go to a firearms range last year, though. I had an exchange student from Europe recently, and he said his mom said she'd be happy as long as he ended up anywhere in the US except Texas.
I live in New Orleans, like in the city. His mom was still happy it wasn't Texas. He said he'd fill her in on the actual danger to him in New Orleans versus Texas when he went home. I visited New York City and had the expectation that everyone would be rushing around and keeping to themselves, but people were so friendly. Like several times a day, girls stopped me in the street simply to say something nice about my hair or outfit. I just found it really strange, but nice. I'm from London, UK, and I guess I'm just used to people avoiding eye contact or talking to strangers. The only downside was the catcalling was heavy and more aggressive than I've experienced anywhere else. I've only been to New York City, LA, Vegas, and Florida, but I've generally always found Americans to be really pleasant and polite. I've had to rethink just how antisocial we are in a lot of Northern European and British cities. Perhaps even if New York is unfriendly by US standards, it's still worlds ahead of Britain in acknowledging people around you. That it was a big country. It's not. It's insanely vast. Stupidly vast. Beyond anything I can compare it to. Returning to the UK after a trip to the US, it feels like I'm visiting Toy Town and everything is just so cute. And I'm English and feel like this after a week or two away. Also, people are a lot less fat than we're led to believe. Yeah, there's some obesity, but no more than I see here in the UK. I also felt massively safer driving in the US than I do in the UK. People seem to drive with a lot more patience and there's a lot less under or overtaking. In the UK, at any given moment, someone is planning to cut you up or is actively swearing at you a car away for being either too fast or too slow, or not pulling away from the red light the instant it turns amber. Yeah, a lot of people underestimate the physical size of the country. It's common in conversations about travel for Americans to point out the ease of traveling in Europe. Americans don't understand how you can hit 2 to 3 countries in a day or for a weekend. Europeans don't understand that you can drive for 8 hours through Texas and still be in Texas. The East Coast with the smaller states are easier to travel through with transit, but once you get west of DC or Maryland, there isn't transit connecting cities. It's plane, car, or if you're severely unlucky, Greyhound bus or rail. My friend's wife is from Costa Rica. She was shocked to find out that Americans take regular showers when she moved here. I guess most of the Americans she was exposed to growing up were the backpack Costa Rica hippie types who didn't clean themselves much. Thought food was going to be crap for some reason, then discovered that the quality was way better than what I'm used to. Also thought everyone was going to be morbidly obese. Came to Colorado, and 90% of people are fit as frick. I thought Walmart was going to suck. I ended up loving Walmart. I also didn't know Colorado was the fittest state before coming to the US. I know now. As someone from somewhere else in America, I just had the same experience on my first trip to the Rockies. Retirees trail running past us up a 45-degree grade at 10,000 feet above sea level. Wow. I thought that WrestleMania was a huge deal for Americans. I was hoping that it would be like a national holiday. WrestleMania and NASA are my 2 favorite things about America. So this was very sad for me. Vince McMahon would like to have a word with you about an exciting offer that only costs $9.99 a month. Met a guy from Portugal in Portland, Oregon. He said he was surprised that he hasn't seen anyone get shot in the street yet. He assumed everyone in America carried a piece, and street shootings were extremely common. I'm curious, did he think that they were Western-style shootouts, or more like just random acts of violence? Hell, I'm from Idaho and went to New York for Comic-Con, and got asked how I liked the modern tech available in the city. I was confused until we talked more and realized that he thought we didn't have electricity or cars, and that I used a 6-shooter to shoot coyotes trying to get at my cows. It's not just non-Americans. Not really a misconception, but I was pretty young when I moved to the US from mainland Europe. My parents mentioned that the US was at war with Iraq. This was in 2003, and I was wondering to myself why we were moving to a war zone. I thought there would be air raids and bombings all the time. When I was very young, I thought English people lived in castles and rode horses and went to war with bows and arrows. I didn't understand that the movies I saw were portraying historical England, not contemporary England. That's what they actually do. When you travel to England, they'll take you to the special places for tourists, where they maintain the appearance of a modern lifestyle. However, it's all a big conspiracy because they don't let the tourists go to the real places where the English live in castles and ride horses. Their maps are fake, public transport is rigged, every inhabitant of England is sworn to maintain the secrecy of their true lifestyle. That everyone is as good-looking as the people on TV. We are, but that show is Roseanne. To appreciate the quality of this joke, I had to Google image the show Roseanne, and I guess the joke is that most of you basically look like normal people. Zing. Hollywood. I believed it was wall-to-wall famous people, walking on red carpets dressed in golden gowns, and everything was possible if you just walked on that beautiful boulevard. Wrong. Big time. There was nothing, and I mean nothing worse than when we had out-of-town family visit us, fam lives in SoCal, LA area, and begged to be taken to Hollywood so they could see the Walk of Fame, etc. Even after explaining that it's a dump, they always insisted. And then we'd get there and they'd see what we were talking about, and we'd have to claw our way out after 30 minutes. That area is horrible in the summer. Traffic going in and out is impossible, everything is overpriced, and it's filthy as heck. I had to work for an event designer out there for a year, and that drive was part of the reason I quit so soon. I love LA and all the cities in it, but Hollywood and Venice Beach can go get screwed. That every shop is like Costco, big in bulk and relatively cheap. That the majority of people in the US are fat, racist, and selfish motherfrickers. I couldn't be more wrong. Everyone was very nice, educated, and kind. Unfortunately, the worst people get the most attention inside and outside the US. Rednecks and hillbillies. I thought that it was a geographical thing and you can only see them in the South. The ones I met up north were pretty hostile at first, but turned out to be awesome people in the end. I thought Americans, especially Californians, are sassy and snobbish. I was so wrong about that. They're freaking chill, friendly, and some are really down to earth. I also thought that most are really rich and that they own mansions with swimming pools at the mountains of Hollywood, but no. Most of them live in apartments and houses. My big misconception was I thought life was easy here, that you don't have to do 2 to 4 jobs just to make a lot of money, but unfortunately it was the other way. When I was in high school, a friend's older sister had a German student and a British student visit for Thanksgiving. They were students with her at UT. It was so much fun talking to them about the US and answering all their questions. The best, though, was their questions on the states. They thought Chicago was a state, and were surprised to learn Hawaii and Alaska were states as well. They thought they were a step up from Puerto Rico, but they were surprised to learn they also had representatives and senators. From the outside, the US looked like one country. Once you're there and drive around multiple states, it more seems like many different countries with different accents, laws, regulations, way of life, food. That was a big surprise for me. Misconceptions before moving to America. 1. Americans only work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. 2. No one works after 12 on Fridays. 3. Americans take a lot of vacations, summer plus Thanksgiving plus Christmas. After moving to America, 1. Everyone is working their butts off. 2. The concept of fixed hours is fuzzy, people log in early and late to get to important stuff at work, and 3. Americans are not getting much time off, most are not even using their vacation days. I was told the typical stuff before going to the US the first time. The TSA are buttholes, everyone carries a piece, and people are hella unfriendly. I saw more pieces in Schiphol in Amsterdam than I did in O'Hare. Seriously, police with MP5s about every 30 feet. Dogs as well, very weird. Also, O'Hare freaking stinks. Worst airport in the world. Anyway, yeah, I realize mileage may vary with the TSA, but everyone was friendly, interested in my trip in a good way, and helpful. No issues. Spoke to a police officer like an hour later, super friendly and helpful as well. I was starving, he showed me a good place to eat, and had food himself as well. We talked a bit while eating. Cool guy. Everyone was super talkative and friendly in the US. The talkative part is weird, coming from Sweden. I got compliments on my shirt within an hour of leaving the airport after my second in-country flight. That would basically never happen in Sweden. People here dislike social interaction. In the US, it was like free-for-all talking, joking, and complimenting each other. It was nice. As a resident Swede, this is all completely true for those of us who visit the States from here, as I've alluded to in my previous comments. Having strangers talk to you in a friendly manner is genuinely mind-blowing to us who live here. I've lived in the US permanently since 2015, but I've been coming regularly, 3 to 6 month visits, since 2010. As an Englishman, I signed up for the 2 main stereotypes pre-2010. 1. That all Americans are incredibly obnoxious and loud in public. 2. That everyone in America is a mixture of stupid and fat. Since then, I've evolved my thinking to say the least. 1. They're really not obnoxious, nor are they loud in public. English people are just painfully awkward and shy, hence the crappy handshakes, the lack of eye contact, and the "speak up you bellend" Mumbling of words in public. Trust me, you start to notice this behavior when you've had something to contrast it with. 2. Obviously there are stupid people here, but that is true of any country. It's worth pointing out that I've yet to meet a group of people or a set of individuals as stupid or as cringe-inducing as the people I grew up with in the northwest of England, and I've travelled throughout the south and gone from coast to coast. For instance, I've never once had to explain what a bachelor's degree is in the good old US of A. That was a weekly occurrence after I graduated uni in England. The fat thing is also a bit of a reach too. Americans are typically more health conscious from my experience. I officially became an American a few years ago, but before I first came to the country, I used to believe that American streets would be cleaner than clean and paved with gold. I'm originally from Jamaica. Our streets, back then, were not always as presentable. Then again, it also depends on which area of Jamaica you resided, worked, etc. Anyway, I thought American streets or roads were yellow brick road immaculate. Not sure why I believed that, it wasn't true. They're just as normal as other streets. But I tell you what, it blew my mind when I first saw a street sweeper. That was awesome. I ran into some dude outside of the States that asked me why Americans eat dogs. After maybe not understanding my "what the frick" look for a while, he then asked what hot dogs were. So at the very least I was able to explain, in freedom terms, what God's gift to man is. Hot dogs. What's the worst thing a protagonist ever did in a children's movie or show? Tink in Peter Pan is an absolute monster. She tried to get the Lost Boys to murder Wendy. The whole film is full of aberrant morality. I mean, that's relatively on the low end of her atrocities. She sells out Pan and the Lost Boys to the pirates because of her hatred and jealousy. In the book, it's even worse because the pirates aren't buffoons, but highly competent and malicious. Smee isn't as much of a lovable idiot in the original. He's a sadistic torturer whose sword is called Johnny Corkscrew because he wiggles it in the wound after shanking someone. He's described as a genial man who's not as severe as the other pirates to the kids, but he's also described as one who would stab with no offense. Don't forget Peter Pan was a monster too. He'd teach kids how to fly, but never how to land, and they'd just fly until they starved to death. Lab rats. The dad/inventor kept the kids in cages, and it wasn't until he married and got a stepson that they got rescued. Then everyone was, oh well, good times. Honestly, a lot of Disney shows and other kids' shows have creepy undertones like this. This won't make much sense to anyone who's never watched the show, but I'll never forget an episode of Wizards of Waverly Place where Alex makes a new friend that turns out to be part of this underground uprising against the unfair rules on who gets to have powers. She seemingly joins her, only to find out she was actually tricking her so she could turn her into the authorities. They act like this was a huge, brave, and heroic thing she did, and that the people fighting against unfairness were those evil people who deserved to be punished. Basically, the message was that you should never question authority, and those who try to stand against unjust laws should be turned in. It really creeped me out. Oh, it turns out I misremembered that last part. It's actually worse than that. She freezes her to give her powers to her brother, and then Alex's little brother Max knocks her over and shatters her as the laugh track plays, and they act like it's no big deal. They literally kill her and shrug it off. Man, the people who made that show are messed up, especially making it a kids' show. Princess Poppy in the Trolls movie. The whole problem and everyone nearly dying was all because she couldn't accept and let someone be happy not singing and dancing. I think they handled her better in the second film when Branch outright tells her she's not listening to anyone and making things worse. The fat controller in Thomas the Tank Engine bricking up Henry the Green Train. All Henry wanted was a coat of waterproof paint or a break from the work till the rain stopped. Nope, brick up the tunnel and take up the tracks. Frick you, engine, you work for me. Is the fat controller really the good guy? The trains are enslaved and taken to the junker's yard if not really useful. Dude is worse than that Grandpa Joe. Ha ha ha, laughed the fat controller. You are wrong. There are a lot of downright concerning implications of the Thomas verse. These talking, thinking, feeling creatures are often subjected to downright dangerous work conditions and punished terribly if they voice dissent. That show haunted the young narrator once upon a time. Agent Black from Johnny Test casually and nonchalantly says, "I blew up Malaysia." Also, what I find funny, blowing up Malaysia only gets them down to the level of police officer. Here's my entry to help get conversation going. In the 2005 Disney movie Chicken Little, The school bully, Foxy Loxy, gets teleported by aliens and suffers brain damage resulting in a massive personality change. When the aliens move to return her to normal, Runt of the Litter stops them, saying she was now perfect. It's then implied the two become romantically involved. Let's not forget Buck Cluck being a really crap father to Chicken Little. Frick it, this whole movie just sucks. I don't think it would be remiss to say, frick Buck Cluck. Sportacus and Stephanie treating Robbie Rotten badly, all because he didn't want to be active. Let him live in Lazy Town in peace. Those two came to a place literally called Lazy Town and tried to force everyone to be more active and stuff. If anything, Robbie Rotten should have been the hero for trying to maintain how the town should be. You speak the truth. If you think about it, Robbie Rotten is far more heroic. Sportacus thinks that being active is the key to happiness and well-being. As such, he tries to convince the kids to be more active, which in turn requires him to be active. Okay, sure. Now, Robbie Rotten thinks that the key to happiness and well-being is to be inactive. As such, he tries to convince the kids to be less active, which in turn requires him to be active. Now, this is Robbie making his day worse to improve someone else's day. Ignoring the question of which of them is correct in their worldview, it's obvious that Robbie Rotten is substantially more selfless. The episodes often show Robbie bothered, usually not by the noise the children are making, but by the idea that they are being active. He goes through huge amounts of work and planning to correct this, often making elaborate games for kids in the process. Finally, let's examine the basic claim that Sportacus makes that the children would be happier and healthier if they subscribed to his lifestyle. They do seem to enjoy his sports, though Ziggy often has his complaints. However, compare this to the joy the children had in Robbie Rotten's "You're a Pirate" game, which involved nothing but props, imagination, and singing. Everyone loved it. You might think then that at least Sportacus is correct that the children would be healthier if they followed his advice, but once again I say that Robbie is right. If you trap Sportacus in a cage, he starts to pass out in mere minutes from fruit withdrawal. He might be able to outrun Robbie, sure, but it isn't like Robbie isn't capable enough to build a treehouse, ships, and whatnot. The Cat in the Hat nearly pummeled a young child's skull with a baseball bat. That movie is hilarious and yet so screwed up. He legit cuts his tail off and swears in front of children. In High School Musical, when everyone manipulates Troy into saying he doesn't care about Gabriella at all while recording the whole thing so that she sees it. God, if I was Troy and learned about that, I'd have quit the basketball team. If my friends couldn't stand by me and sold me out like that, there's no reason to be with them. Same with Gabriella and her science friends. Of course, they didn't manipulate her into saying things she'd regret and film it, but they still thought her potentially being distracted from their competition was enough of a reason to mess up her relationship. It's been a while since I've seen it, I'm sorry if I made mistakes. In the Rapunzel TV series, there's a controversial episode in which Rapunzel, after having an argument with Eugene in which she disagrees with his advice, accidentally goes back in time to a point when Eugene was a thieving teen. During this episode, she appears as one of the Stabbington brothers and ends up changing Eugene's views in the future to match hers by the end of the show. Eugene has no idea this has even happened. It's pretty controversial because while Rapunzel didn't mean to do it, she sort of forced a core personality change in him, and the show never really addressed the argument because Eugene is just like, I don't know why we were arguing before because I agree, and the end of the episode. The following story is from a series that I've never seen, nor probably ever will see, but it definitely has some mind-bogglingly interesting implications from the way the author describes it. In the 4th season of Winx Club, the main characters get a new power-up, the Believix, and it's a mess. They each get a new power to use at their own discretion. Here's a quick description of what these powers let them do. 1. The Strength of Life. Bloom. It lets her make people believe in magic and help them overcome their weaknesses. She decides what qualifies as a weakness. She overrides a person's free will to make them believe in magic, which just so happens to make the girls stronger and rewrite their personality if she doesn't like it. Dawn of Light. Stella. It makes her people more cooperative and accepting. Basically, she overrides another person's free will, so they do what she says. Breath of the World. Flora. It lets her make people show more appreciation for nature. Nice on paper, but it basically makes people ignore potentially more important tasks or forego certain technologies in favor of nature. Bright Heart. Muser. This is actually the most normal because aside from the usual of making people believe in magic, its only other effect is to convince people that they can change. Gem of Mind. Techna. To quote the official description of this ability, she can use it to make people think correctly. I think that's enough info. She decides how people should think and magically imposes that way of thinking onto them. The Spirit of Courage, Aisha. This is also very basic, the same as the first one with the added bonus of making people braver. but one use in particular rubbed me the wrong way. In one scene, she made a girl walk through a wall of fire to escape the burning building. The girl with water magic whose best friend is on the way to becoming an insufferable Mary Sue, and whose fire magic can extinguish any flame with a snap of her fingers. There was literally no need to endanger that girl like that. They had 2 people on scene who could not only have saved the building, but also all 6 of them could have repaired it with magic. Overall, those girls are a threat to society. They're emotionally unstable, have 0 coping mechanisms for when they get sad, and are basically demigods. Musa once saw her boyfriend with another woman, and she just ran away crying like a kid. She has sound-based powers. She could have easily listened to what they were saying. I put forth that Santa is a total butthole in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I can understand the young reindeer making fun of Rudolph's red nose. Kids are mean and will easily make fun of someone for being different. But then Santa walks in. He could have set everyone straight right there. Explained how it's our differences that make everyone special and all that. Nope, he readily agrees with everyone that Rudolph is a lost cause and even tells Donna he should be ashamed of his son's red nose. Da frick? Until he needs him, then all of a sudden he's part of the group and useful and liked. That's some fit in or go fricking die if I ever saw it. Any deviations from the norm will not be tolerated unless it's exploitable. Ho ho ho! Land Before Time when they're sleeping in the footprint and Sarah tries to wake them up gently and quietly. Littlefoot starts being loud and attracts the sharp tooth, causing him to lose the last gift his mother ever gave him, a tree star. Literally every single decision made by Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire. What's interesting is that as a kid you side with Robin Williams. Rewatching it as an adult, the guy was seriously dysfunctional and his wife was absolutely right to divorce his butt. Also, you realize that Pierce Brosnan's character wasn't the villain you thought he was when you were a kid. He was a legitimately nice, solid guy dating a woman with 3 kids going through a contentious divorce. He was a saint, but ended up almost choking to death. Batman shutting down a machine that was turning Matt Hagen, aka Clayface, back into a human because he was using an experimental thing stolen from his company. I never hated Batman more than that moment because the animated series Clayface is the most tragic fricking creature of a man there ever was. Ron Perlman always made me cry when he had that first moment where he says, "I'm not even a man." I cry every time. In the episode, he's falling apart and dying, then when he's there on the precipice of becoming human again, he can feel it. Batman tosses a batarang and cuts off the flow of the chemical. Fricking hated him for that. Yes, thank you. I hated that episode as a kid. Clayface had the chance to get his life back, but Batman stops it because he stole something? It felt so unfair. Fair to say that The Dark Knight has often done some pretty controversial things in his many iterations, but I'm not sure that anyone can look at his solution and agree it was the morally right thing to do by any means here. Perhaps some of you would disagree. Let me know. Sounds like what happened to Deadshot in that movie. Confronted him when he's out with his child for Christmas shopping, if I recall correctly. Carly from iCarly was a butthead. Remember that episode where she's attracted to the guy because he stole his brother's motorcycle? Then she dumps him because he was not manly enough because he collects plushies. Schneider's humor was so mean-spirited overall. Remember the one where Freddy says he didn't like Fred, and Fred made the whole video about quitting the internet forever, and Freddy was getting hate mail including a phone call from his aunt where she told him she hoped he fricking died? Then at the end they met Fred, and he tells him the whole thing was just made-up drama to bring attention to iCarly and his own channel, and he didn't even bother to fricking tell them first. Pretty much everyone in that show was a crap bag. The third Hokage really had Naruto living by himself. Poor, begging the ramen man to feed him. All this after promising his dying parents that he would take care of him. He was basically the ruler of the village and let the kid live in poverty for no reason. Goku giving Perfect Cell a damn senzu bean right before his emotional teenage son fought him to the death, over the fate of the Earth. A couple of people have said this, can you elaborate? Okay, so Perfect Cell is essentially a combination of all the strongest fighters on Earth. Fighters who have killed planet-destroying monsters, or a being who killed them all in an alternate timeline. Goku, in some sort of bizarre test, fought Cell and won, but didn't kill him, instead he healed him, which brought him to beyond his full strength thanks to alien biology, and made his son fight him for the fate of the planet, just to see if Earth will be okay if Goku dies. This led to his own death, giving his son PTSD, causes the end of the world in the next arc, thanks to Rival becoming evil thanks to a lack of a sparring partner whose power releases an intergalactic demon who destroys Earth. Dragon Ball is weird, I know. and makes both of his sons fatherless for the greater half of their childhood. The parents and parent trap. Let's separate our twins, take one each, and never tell our respective child that she has a sister. What the frick? Mr. Krabs drove his rival Plankton to take his own life by stalking and harassing him in a pearl costume in the one-course meal episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. What about when SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs actively attempted to cover up what they thought was a murder? Also, didn't Bubble Buddy basically just watch a guy drown? There was some dark crap in SpongeBob. Fun fact, one of the recent SpongeBob episodes legitimately referenced Squidward trying to take his own life. Basically, Squidward and SpongeBob had to deliver a Krabby Patty to a bizarre mind-frickery land. Squidward tried to escape from the place by opening a series of doors until a jump scare of Squidward's face showed up. The UK version removed that part for some reason. Just saw an episode of Teen Titans the other day, and they spent nearly a whole episode trying to escape this witch that had mind-controlled them and was trying to eat them. When they finally trap her back in the cursed pie, it's a weird episode, they leave it outside the door of the teenage supervillain group so that they will get eaten. I can't frame this in any other way than attempted murder. Teen Titans, don't go. Not sure if it counts as a children's movie, but in Man of Steel, Superman grabs one of the Kryptonians and flies him straight into a gas station, causing a huge explosion. The gas station had multiple cars parked at the pumps. In other words, Superman, who later on cries over having to kill the villain intent on destroying his planet, straight up killed at least half a dozen people out of pure negligence and didn't bat an eye. There's a bunch of great videos on YouTube about this, but Superman is portrayed so badly in the DC movies. In the comics, he's such a nice guy. In the movies, he's an emotional robot. He sees an entire building blow up in front of him and just fricks right off. He doesn't even try to help. What the frick? I'm sure the Man of Steel doesn't count as a kids movie as well. I was just desperate to be able to comment on one of the few things that I've actually seen in this collection of stories. Yes, Clark kills a whole bunch of people, and yes, he gives about 1,000th of a frick about it as he does for killing one genocidal Kryptonian general. Hey, remember when in Spider-Man Far From Home, Tony Stark left a high schooler an advanced military drone system with no instructions on how to use it? Like that's a thing that shouldn't exist at all, but much less in the hands of a teenager. Yeah, on the bus in the first hour of the movie, doesn't he accidentally order a hit on one of his classmates? Like it's kinda weird that in Homecoming he didn't let Peter have access to most of the stuff in his suit, but then in Far From Home he's just like, you know what would be a good idea? Letting a teenager have a pair of glasses that could literally order an entire fleet of deadly drones to kill an entire population of people. I mean, at least leave him a manual that he has to read before he has full control over the glasses, surely. As told by Ginger. Fricking Dodie. Rather be popular and wanted than be a good friend to Ginger. I loved As Told by Ginger growing up, and Dodie was the biggest irritant on the show by far. Any little sliver of a chance that she could become popular, she'd drop Ginger and Macy in a heartbeat, only to come crawling back when it blew up in her face. Oh, that one kid, Greg? I don't know, from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He fricking shuns his best friend for clout, breaks his arm, throws kids in a ditch in the rain, craps on his friend's comic idea, and blames his friend for getting him fired from being a hall monitor. At the beginning of Megamind, when they were just school kids, Metro Man is literally responsible for turning Megamind to villainy by ostracizing and bullying him. It turned out okay in the end, but it's bothersome he never addressed or apologized for his behavior. Willy Wonka literally disfigured 4 kids on his factory tour. Not to mention all the slave labor. Butthole pays Oompa Loompas with cocoa beans. That's definitely below the minimum wage. In the first Harry Potter, Dumbledore gets to the end of the year when they count up all the points to see who was the best house. Gryffindor are dead last and Slytherin in first place, like literally 150 points ahead. Dumbledore announces Slytherin is the winner, but then he's like, hold up, I've got a couple of announcements for the final tally. Ron is good at chess, 50 points. Hermione is smart, 50 points. Harry is low-key the bravest guy I know, 100 points. Checks calculations, Gryffindor and Slytherin are tied. And Neville was able to have a direct conversation. 5 points. Gryffindor wins! The little girl who lets out all of the dinosaurs at the end of what I think is the second Jurassic World movie. The dinosaurs are about to be gassed to death or something, and they make a moral decision to let them out, since they have a right to live and survive. So the little girl lets them loose, and almost immediately, the dinosaurs are released and kill a bunch of the villains in the movie. We're supposed to cheer, as the audience, I guess, that the villains are finally getting their comeuppance, but I mean these dinosaurs aren't sentient or moral like humans. They weren't killing bad people, they were just killing people, and the good guys unleashed human-murdering dinosaurs on the planet. Like, no crap. Within just a few short moments, people died when they let them out of their cages. Harry Potter being left to a known abusive family by a society of wizards has to be high up there. Actually, the whole of Hogwarts is pretty fricked up. They're so irresponsible. They literally teach kids how to basically make Rohypnol. And they sent Harry and his crew into a literal death forest where a powerful unicorn-killing wizard was hiding. Part of why I love/hate Umbridge so much. It's super effective when the lady comes along whose punishments are so fricked up, even by wizard standards. Umbridge is just such a perfect microcosm of petty, official tyranny. We've all met Umbridge in one guise or another, and the hatred people like that stir up in almost everyone is distilled into her character. She's like the platonic form of the parking warden who delights in seeing someone's car towed away. The bureaucrat who barely suppresses a giggle as your dream house has its planning denied. The port official who politely but gleefully informs you that at his say-so you won't be allowed to board the ferry to go on holiday because of a slight paperwork mistake. She's Orwell's proverbial boot stamping on a human face forever. She's the Vogons if someone made a serious take on the concept. She's the personification of the system triumphing over the individual. She's the meat grinder from another brick-in-the-wall video that homogenizes children into a uniform paste. Umbridge absolutely nails that whole archetype, and the fact that she's so memorable is because we've all met her. I dare say Umbridge is Rowling's greatest character, for the sheer hatred she instills in absolutely everyone. The Jedi taking children from their family and encouraging emotional repression. I just started watching Clone Wars recently, having missed it during the actual run. So far, I've seen at least 1 or 2 fake surrenders by the Jedi, and I was like, that's an actual war crime. You can't just do that. I mean, that's just a surefire way to make sure your enemy doesn't accept surrenders anymore and just murders you. Not just emotional repression as well. Many children are taken from distinct species, cultures, and traditions. They indoctrinate them into a cult-like order of mystics, teach them feelings are wrong, familial bonds are wrong, and fraternal bonds are wrong, carnal pleasures and vices are wrong, and suggest that abstinence is important. Preach peace and harmony, and teach them how to use a laser sword and mystic powers to enforce their peaceful ways and the ideals of the Senate. Jingle All the Way is a story about a dad who punches and lies to everyone he meets over the course of a day, only to steal a toy for his kid. As much as I loved the show as a kid and still like it now, I'm a lot older and more cynical. And I can't get over the plain and simple truth that SpongeBob is unforgivably annoying when you really think about it. He's an excellent cook and a good and supportive friend and generally a good soul. But overall? Yeah, I'm quite sympathetic to the living hell Squidward lives in on some days. The older I get, the more I understand Squidward. You either die a SpongeBob or you live long enough to see yourself become a Squidward. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.